1-2 pitch. Launched into left. Get out of here. See ya. Home run. Nolan Arenado. The Cardinals add on against the A's. Chopper. Arenado charging. Bare hand. He got him. Nolan Arenado with another terrific play. Into left. It's down for another hit. Nolan Arenado with another hit on the day.
To be able to have a front row seat to that every single night, I don't take it for granted, that's for sure. He's a special player, arguably the best ever, at that position.
He's one of the best at it, but we enjoy having him on this side, that's for sure.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It was the Nolan Arenado show last night. And you heard in the backdrop of that a brief fast lane appearance there.
Smart. From August 7th. If you missed that episode, make sure you check it out on the podcast.
Flashbacks to 9 years ago.
Tired Auto Centers.
That audio was courtesy of Valley Sports Midwest. Guys, it's good to see Nolan Arenado back to looking like himself. Earlier today, Derek Gould had the numbers in his piece in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. On July 18th, Nolan Arenado was a -6 in terms of defensive runs saved. So he was considered to be a below-average defender at the position. Since then, he's a +5. He's back to looking like the Nolan Arenado of old. You look at the numbers on the back of the baseball card now, where he's at. He's batting .290 on the season. He's on pace this year to hit 35 home runs and 115 RBIs. We all know what to expect every single season from Nolan Arenado. And Alex, he is going to have those exact same numbers once again. It was a weird start to the season, especially defensively, but we're watching him get back to form.
Yeah, every time I watch him play, at least in this last stretch, I watch and say he's the reason that this team could win a World Series in the next few years because of the It's not the same in terms of Ronald Acuna Jr., but in terms of all-encompass player of he does everything and he's the attitude of that team, that's what Nolan Arenado is. And when you see him make barehanded throws from third base on a bouncing ball that barely gets to the pitching mound, when you see him crank home runs left and right, you're thinking, that's the optimism. That's the optimism that Cardinals fans should have of this team turning it around. Now, does John Mozeliak do the right moves and get the right pieces? That remains to be seen. But that's why going up to the deadline, all of us in here pushed back on trading Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, because when you lose one of them, you lose an opportunity to get closer to a World Series. And Nolan Arenado performing this way should give everybody optimism that next year could be a completely different season.
Yeah, 100% with you. And that's why you don't trade those guys, because they are the guys that will lead you to hopefully the promised land next year. And it is good to see that the defense, that whatever the issues were early on, were injury-related or arm fatigue, which he said in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch today. And it's good to see that it's back to being back to what you expect from Nolan Arenado, because if that position suddenly became a negative in terms of defensive runs saved, and you started to see the questionable defense like you saw from Arenado in the first half, it changed the equation for the Cardinals completely, and you saw that early on in the year. So the fact that he's been able to get kind of back to where you expect him to be, not just at the plate, I think we all knew that was coming, even though he had the slow start to the season, but the defense getting it back to where you expect it to be, that's a big thing for the St. Louis Cardinals, and for them to be a team that we talk about playing the Cardinal way again and making sure they right the ship defensively. He's the leading catalyst for that, being the 10-time Gold Glover that he is, and you needed him to get back on track, and it's good to see he's been back on track.
I think sometimes we underestimate consistency, the importance of it in Major League Baseball. And I know that, so Alex, I gave you crap the other day about Wilson Contreras and his quote-unquote inconsistency, right?
Yeah, I remember. I lost sleep.
You were very upset at me. It was understandable.
Not at you, just the moment.
It's tone problem. I'm
Did you have to
working
cry
on
when
it.
he got home?
No, in the car.
The way that Wilson Contreras gets to his numbers at the end of the season is not the way you would like to see it from a player. He gets really hot for a month, and then he cools off for a month in a significant way, and then he gets really hot for a month, and then he cools off in a big way again.
Like Newbar.
But by the end of the year, you kind of know what to expect. He's going to be about a 250 hitter. He's going to hit like 20 home runs, and you're going to get to that 800-ish OPS, right? It's kind of what you expect. In an ideal world, you just have a guy like this, just level. It's kind of what people thought Goldie was going to be, but he starts out cold and he does the like Matt Holliday thing where it's cold, really hot for like 3 months and then cold again at the end. But Nolan Arenado kind of is that guy. For the most part, he is really consistent. And nobody is more consistent at the end of their seasons than Nolan Arenado. John Denton tweeted this out last night. Arenado is going to likely become the third player to hit 25 or more home runs in 3 straight seasons with the Cardinals. He has done it over the last 3 seasons, which are his only 3 seasons here in St. Louis. You guys know who was the last Cardinals player to do that? 3 straight years of 25-plus home runs.
Albert.
It was.
Yeah.
It was Albert Pujols from 2001 to 2011 every single year, which is just remarkable.
Stud.
The other guys that have done this is a who's who in recent Cardinals memory. Jim Edmonds, Mark McGwire, and then you got to go all the way back to Stan for the guy that did it prior to those 4 players over the last 25 years. You could go even further than that. Forget just Cardinals baseball. He is likely, Nolan Arenado is, this season, to have his 4th season since 2015, since he broke into the big leagues, with at least 35 home runs and at least 125 RBIs. No other player in Major League Baseball has done that more than once since 2015. Arenado's ability to get to those specific numbers, whether it's in Coors Field or here at Busch Stadium, is nothing short of remarkable. And it's what I think we miss with guys like Brendan Donovan or Lars Nootbaar or Tommy Edman to a degree, is when you watch them every day, you really gain an appreciation for the defense that they bring, the intensity that they bring. And then, yes, some of the numbers offensively that they bring as well, the ability to just rack up the hits over the course of the season. And that's something that I really respect about Nolan Arenado, is his ability to post every single day and his willingness to go out there and find a way by the end of the season to get to these numbers.
And for the people that wanted to trade him away this season because it would have given you the biggest return, that's the culture that you don't trade away. Because you trade that player away, then who's setting the tone in the clubhouse? Because you don't have a guy who goes on the field every single day, regardless of his back hurting or his arm hurting, regardless if he's playing like ish or if he's playing well. Nobody's willing to be that guy unless you have him on the roster, because Nolan Arenado brings everybody into the fight. You trade him away, you're setting yourself back 3 to 5 years, because you're hoping somebody takes that torch, just like it was when Chris Carpenter was here and Adam Wainwright took that torch, and when every other catcher that's been in the system behind Yachty was, he'll carry that torch. When they go, if you don't have somebody who's ready to do that, you're going to be searching for them for the next 5+ years.
Nolan Arenado has played in 114 games for the Cardinals so far this season. 114 games. That's a hell of a path for him. The Cardinals have played 120 so far this year. I love that you said that, Alex, because I was watching MLB Network yesterday. They're talking about the Braves, and one of the under the radar keys to their success is their ability to get guys to post every single day. Do you know Matt Olson has played in all 119 games so far this year for the Atlanta Braves? Do you know Austin Riley has played in all 119 games for the Braves? Do you know Ronald Acuna has also played in every single game so far this season for the Atlanta Braves?
Nicker's going to wear him out.
Ozzie Albies, prior to going on the injured list, had also played in every single game for the Braves.
So if I'm connecting the tea leaves, Tyler O'Neill's going to get traded to Atlanta?
Atlanta has 4 dudes that prior to the last 2 days had played in every game for them. They knew when they were writing out their lineup, Olsen, Albies, Riley, Acuna, those are 4 guys we are writing in pen. No matter what the situation, no matter what the game, they're going out there every single day because they want to post every single day. That is the culture that Nolan Arenado brings to St. Louis. He wants to be out there. We've heard Ollie talk about it before, whether his back's on fire or he's going through a slump. He believes he will hit his way out of it. Some of the other guys
Neil.
do not feel that way. They want to be at 100% to be able to find their way back into the groove of things. And I think that is the difference between a guy like Nolan Arenado, who is a perennial all-star, perennially gets to 35 home runs, perennially gets to 115 plus RBIs. That's the difference between a player like that that's a future Hall of Famer and a guy that has the potential to be a perennial all-star and the potential to be a Hall of Fame type of a player. What Nolan Arenado has accomplished in his career is remarkable, and what he's accomplished already here in St. Louis is something that I know this season has sucked for everybody, but what he has done on the field has been super impressive despite all of the losses that are starting to rack up.
And I think knowing that you have him for the next however many years his contract has, provide you the, again, optimism of the future when you have players like Brendan Donovan and Nolan Gorman, but sooner or later Masyn Winn, and you've got Jordan Walker. Those young players working with Nolan Arenado, seeing him going out there every single day, regardless of how he feels, those are the four guys I want around Arenado as they continue to grow in this organization.
It's the watching somebody else do it so you can find out what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
We heard that story last year.
I can't remember who said it, but I do remember somebody having that comment.
Well, there was one about Pujols, where Pujols, when he first got to Cardinals camp, was just hitting. After all of the pregame and in-game he would then go over to the batting cages, and there would be young guys that were walking off in their street clothes, and they would see Albert, who's 42 years old, over in the batting cages working on his swing. They would go back into the clubhouse while they were down in Jupiter when it's, 85, 90 degrees with 100% humidity outside. They'd be like, hey, if Albert's out there hitting, let's go get some opportunities to hit in the cage with Albert freaking Pujols. The same thing's true with Nolan.
That's why O'Reilly was loved here, because every single day after practice of an hour, it would be Robert Thomas on the ice with Ryan O'Reilly, and more guys would just stick around every single day. You want those guys around your team.
Yeah, think about Nootbaar. What did Nootbaar say that got his swing back on track in the second half of the season? He said, I went to Nolan's place, I went to his warehouse out in California, and we hit in the morning, we hit after lunch, and we hit after dinner. And they just found a way to get him back on track. A whole lot of hitting going on with Nolan Arenado. And Nolan Arenado has done exactly that for the Cardinals. 3 straight seasons to start out his career here in St. Louis. 35 home runs, 30 home runs, and so far this year, 25 home runs. Like to see him get back to that 30-plus mark this year, and it's starting to look like he's going to be able to do exactly that. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll talk to Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues. Headliner of the show today, boys. We got Masyn Winn, the Cardinals shortstop prospect, joining us coming up at 1 o'clock. So tell one, tell all, go tell your friends. Masyn Winn will join the show coming up at 1 o'clock today. But coming up next, Alex, I'm not ready to say that Dak is back.
Oh, I am.
But I'm willing to say that Dakota Hudson is going to be back with the Cardinals in some capacity next year. We'll discuss it next year on 101 ESPN.
When you get home later on today, go take a look at your house. Take a look at the exterior of it, whether you've got siding or brick or stucco or whatever, whatever you have, and look at it. Does it look worn down? Does it look like it needs a facelift? Because if it does, you call Rhino Shield. When it comes to your house, you don't need it looking worn down. You don't want it that shame of when you drive by it where it looks like the weather's taking a toll on your house. No, you want that new house look, and that's what Rhino Shield can provide you. Frankly, they can change it to whatever you want. We did that with our house when we moved in. It was this nasty looking blue siding with weird looking brick, and it just didn't match what we wanted. We called up Darren, had him come out to give us a free estimate, and Rhino Shield changed the outlook of our home. On top of all of this, you get a 25-year transferable warranty. It adds that instant curb appeal that I talked about. It's 100% waterproofed, and it deflects 90% of the UV rays. So whether you're selling it soon or you're just going to be in it for the rest of your life, you know that it's going to look the way you want it to look. So give Darren a call today. Have him come out again for a free estimate and fall in love with Rhino Shield's work. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25RHINO.com.
This, it's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
The 1-2. He got him swinging. Dakota Hudson out number 2. To show what he can do, slow roller. Motter takes it. Off balance throw. Nice one by Motter. And it's 6 scoreless for Dakota. Hudson gets a nice hand, as well deserved.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Dakota Hudson with a nice night last night. That is the audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. Finds a way to give the Cardinals yet another quality start out of deck. Now, I want to put a disclaimer out there because I think it's important to do so. Yesterday came against the Oakland Athletics, and if that was the first time that we had seen Dakota Hudson perform like this recently, I would have a lot of caveats about what we saw. That lineup is atrocious that we are watching right now from Oakland. We're watching the difference between a team that's underperformed, St. Louis, and a team that is legitimately tanking and trying to do everything they can to lose games in 2023. That's what the Oakland Athletics are. But Dakota Hudson has done this against other opponents as well. He was solid, not spectacular, but solid against Tampa Bay. He gave you 7 strong innings against the Minnesota Twins. So this is no longer a one-off. In the month of August, 3 starts, more than 18 innings, a 3.8 ERA. Alex, this is the pitcher that you thought Dakota Hudson could be for the Cardinals. What is he doing to change your expectations for him, though, in the future here in St. Louis?
I mean, he's pounding the strike zone more than anything right now, and he looks like a confident pitcher. And frankly, last year and the beginning of this season, specifically spring training, he didn't look that way. So I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because he realizes that there is a job opportunity in front of him. Maybe he realizes that he might not be a Cardinal after this season and needs to prove it for everybody else. But he's a more confident pitcher in how he approaches the at-bats, which I think tells you a little bit of a difference with Dakota Hudson. Maybe he learned something. Now, the swing and miss stuff wasn't there last night like it was against the Minnesota Twins, but he's inducing those ground balls. And the one thing that's tied to Dakota Hudson is you're going to have a great defense behind him if you want to have success with him. And last night, they got that. They got that against the Tampa Bay Rays. And if you don't have that at the beginning of the season next year, we're probably talking about the same issue with Dakota Hudson. But he has fixed the walk problem. And the walk problem is why we were all pretty much ready to set him out to sea, because we didn't want to deal with that anymore like we had with John Gant. That's not an issue with Dakota Hudson anymore. He is pitching like a prototypical number 5 pitcher, to where he's going to give you 5, maybe more innings. It's not going to be pretty along the way, but if you get good defense and if you find a way to get some swing and miss stuff with that sinker that he uses, he's going to be able to give you a quality season as a number 5 starter. So to me, he's back in the plans for the Cardinals next year.
Yeah, I think he's in the plans, but he's in the plans in terms of being like a depth/long reliever for the St. Louis Cardinals. And I think to what you said, you feel comfortable with him if he has to start games for you as like a number 5. But where the Cardinals are, they need to go out there and sign 3 major league pitchers this year and go into the season with, hey, here are our 5 starters like they did this year, except it's 5 better starters, basically. And you've got Michael slot in the role where he should be as like a number 3 and doesn't have to be bumped up to a 1 because Jack didn't live up to his expectations. And Matt's is your 5, and you're signing a 1, a 2, and a 4. But I think Hudson has pitched his way to where a couple of weeks ago, before the deadline, was that, yeah, they're just going to non-tender him. He's stuck in the minors. He's got a 6 ERA down there in Memphis. But now that he's come up here, he's proven to be, I think, a different pitcher. I think, to your point, he's attacking the strike zone better with the sinker, and he's getting swing and miss on his slider. His whiff rate on that is at 47% right now, which is higher than what it was last year. I think that, why is that? Because I think it's because he hit in the strike zone with the sinker, sets up the slider better. So I like what I'm seeing from Hudson. I would probably tender him a contract, go to the arbitration, try and settle that, figure out what he's going to make, and plan on him being, as of right now, and he'll have to compete for this in spring, compete for being the long man out of the bullpen who's the first guy that comes in and starts when you need it in a pinch.
I just like that he looks confident out there. I think Dakota Hudson is very similar to like a distributing point guard in basketball, and bear with me here. It reminds me of a guy like a Ricky Rubio, where he has no value as a scorer. He's not going to help you with rebounds. The one thing he can do is, if you've got good players around him, man, he's going to find them. He's going to find them in space, and he's going to get them an open look. And on a bad team, that does nothing for you. Because if you don't have good players around Ricky Rubio, now you just have a really good distributor, who's getting the ball in good spots to bad shooters. Doesn't help you a whole lot. He's going to finish with a few assists, and you finish the season feeling like, man, why'd we pay $20 million for Ricky Rubio to do nothing for us? But if you put Ricky Rubio with really good players around him, he's going to find a good shooter in the corner in an open spot, and you're going to get a nice look there because Ricky Rubio created that opportunity for him. That's kind of what Dakota Hudson is. He is a reflection of the defense behind him. If he's got a good defense behind him and he's throwing the ball into the zone, man, he's going to get those ground balls that you were talking about, Alex. They're going to get sucked up by the infield, and you're going to feel pretty good about the end results. Is it sexy? Hell no, it's not. But it's a classic number 4 or 5 starter. It's a guy that pitches to contact. It is a classic Cardinals pitcher. And if that is who he's going to be moving forward, if he can be this version of Dakota Hudson, I am tendering him a contract in the offseason, and I'll figure out what the plan is with him. Maybe that means he's a guy that can come in for me as a long reliever next year. Maybe that means somebody gets hurt in spring training and he's my 5 starter going into the season. Maybe that means he starts out the year down in AAA because he does technically still have options and he's just my 6th starter all year long, and I'll call him up anytime I need a spot start. Doubleheader, Dakota Hudson's making a start. Opportunity because somebody just went on the IL, Dakota Hudson's getting plugged into the rotation. I don't think that's a bad thing. Having a guy that's making $4 million to be that player for you, not inherently a bad thing. So for me, the one thing that's really changed about Dakota Hudson is he's throwing the ball in the zone, he's being confident, and the thing that has changed for my outlook of him, he can be on the roster next year. He's not a non-tender candidate. Based on the way that he's pitching right now, he's got to continue this, though.
Now, I'm going to preface this by saying they can't do this offseason, but this past offseason, when you went into the year and Jake Woodford was your number 5, I would have felt much better if this Dakota Hudson was getting that spot over what Jake Woodford did at the beginning of the season. Again, you need to sign 3 starting pitchers, so Steven Matz is your number 5, but I'm not quick to write off the idea of Steven Matz getting injured at some point in spring training or not looking the way, or one of these guys that you sign not being ready to go at spring training. I need to go to Hudson available. Now, if everything works out well for you and 1 through 5 is pretty much written in pen and Dakota Hudson is right there with Matthew Liberatore, but Matthew Liberator's got a little bit higher upside, I feel really comfortable knowing that Dakota Hudson's going to go into my bullpen as a long man or somebody that I could bring in a 5th or 6th inning if I need to get a ground ball or just to get quick through an inning. And then throughout that season, he's getting spot starts here and there. That is a good thing for this Cardinals team to have this type of pitcher out of their bullpen rather than what they've had out of their bullpen.
And I think that there's not a lot of teams that can, at least if you go into a year and you're planning on Hudson being like the 6th starter, and even Liberatore is going to, depending on how he finishes the year, could fall into this category. There's not a lot of teams that can go into a season going, yeah, we think we know what we get in our number 6 starter. Usually that is a team that goes, oh, bleep, we got to go to a 6 starter. We don't know what we're going to get. We're calling up a prospect, and you don't know what that could be. That could be really good, or it could be like the Matthew Liberatore route where it is inconsistent, not getting guys out. So the fact of the matter that you could be paying a guy $4 million, $5 million to be, whether it be a log man or be a guy that's in the minor leagues that can be the number 6 guy, and you can look at Hudson and go, okay, he's been here, he's done that, and we know what we can get from him. That's really encouraging for the Cardinals because that's the depth that they always claim they have that they never do.
Exactly. And you look to last year's free agent class, just as an example, guys that were getting $4.5 million. We're talking about Wade Miley, Zach Davies, Vince Velasquez, Ryan Yarbrough. That's the market that we're talking about for Dakota Hudson. Could he end up going, if the Cardinals non-tendered him, he's probably in that market. So just go ahead and tender him a contract. I wouldn't even be all that shocked if Dakota Hudson says, hey, let's work out a deal before arbitration. Let's get a number that makes sense for both of us. Maybe it's $3 million. And they both say, okay, let's make this thing work. You're going to be on a contract next year similar to what Drew Verhagen was previously. And maybe that means you're a starter, kind of like what Drew Verhagen's role was when he came over to the Cardinals. They said, hey, we're not sure exactly where you're going to land. Could be a starter, could be a swingman, might be a high-leverage reliever. We'll see how things go. And I think that's what they're going to say to Dakota Hudson. We'll see how this ends up going for the two sides of us. But right now, the biggest thing for him is that he's played his way into their 2024 plans, at least based on what I've seen so far. The one other thing that I wanted to mention pitching-wise, I mentioned Drew Verhagen. Guys, the Cardinals are falling into quite the routine.
Matheny move. Oh.
When it comes to what they're utilizing out of their bullpen. Drew Verhagen has appeared in 7 games since the trade deadline. So has JoJo Romero. No other reliever in Major League Baseball has appeared in more than 7 games since the All-Star break. Or excuse me, since the trade deadline. I get a little nervous with this because, especially with JoJo, like Drew Verhagen, use him as much as you want. He ain't going to be back next year, so whatever. No harm, no foul. Use him up while you can.
Test those new hips.
Let it eat.
JoJo Romero is proving that he's capable of being somebody that can help you next year. Now, we can disagree on what role that looks like. Maybe I'm higher on him than the two of you are. That's totally fine. But we all agree he's probably going to be on the Major League roster next year in some capacity. So don't blow out his arm in games that are meaningless right now. You have found out already he's somebody that can help you. You found out already he responds well to the high-pressure situations. Don't go too far with that. Let's not go to the extent where every time you get into a close game, you have to utilize JoJo Romero. Here's the problem. When you make a move like they did yesterday, you now have like 3 or 4 guys out of that bullpen that you don't want to bring in when it's a close game. And yesterday, when it got close late, you decided, okay, we got to go to some of our better arms to be able to close this thing out. So one of my fears the rest of the way is that they end up overdoing it with JoJo, overdoing it maybe with a guy like John King, and now you have to go into the offseason. You're wondering, like, did we wear these guys out a little bit too much? Is their arm going to be used up by the time that we get into next season? I hope the answer is no, but that is one of my fears down the stretch because of the roster situation that they've placed themselves
in. Well, in the history of the Cardinals overusing, now not with this managers of the past overusing certain arms that are completely broken, and that's my concern just as much as it's yours, BK, of you talking yesterday of Romero being a 6th, 7th, 8th inning guy. If they break him by this season and think he is that guy and don't go spend money on the market to bring in or make a trade to bring somebody in, Romero's that guy. He breaks a month in, now you're left without a chair when the music stops. And that's not a good thing for this Cardinals team. So, yeah, I'm a little concerned with JoJo Romero and the amount of usage, which this is why I just don't understand why not bring some of these other guys that are on your 40-man roster up to give them opportunities.
Careful, you'll get yelled at.
Well, I'm not using willful ignorance right now, BK. You are.
Like, you look at what they have in the bullpen right now. I'm not blaming Ollie for the way that he's utilizing JoJo Romero.
You had nobody else to go to.
It's the smart call. You should go to your better arms when you've got a game like what we saw last night. And JoJo is one of those guys. Giovanni Gallegos is another one of those guys. John King, I think, is basically just better TJ McFarland at this point. He's got better velocity. He gets a ton of ground ball. He's like an 80% ground ball rate since coming to the Cardinals. You should utilize him quite a bit. Andre Palante is in a legit long relief role right now. That's what he's serving for the Cardinals. He threw 45 pitches last time he came into a game. The problem is you have like 3 other long relievers now on this roster as well. Casey Lawrence, that is the only role that he fills for this team. Hey, you're down 12-2 or you're up 12-2, throw Casey Lawrence into this game.
He should have pitched last night in the 9th.
Yeah.
I have an issue with JoJo pitching last night.
Really?
That's not a safe situation. You don't need to bring in. It's a close game. It's the freaking A's and you're up 4.
Yeah.
You should be able to turn to a Casey Lawrence to finish that game out. And if he struggles and like first and second gets on, okay, then we'll have the conversation about bringing in JoJo.
But see, this is why Guillermo Zuniga should have been brought out.
But for what it's worth, it was a safe situation when he was getting ready.
I know, but when they took the 6-2 lead, though, that's when JoJo sits, and that's when somebody else gets ready. Like that's where my problem is with it. Is you should have used a quote unquote long reliever yesterday. Put Casey Lawrence in that game, see if he finishes it. If it gets close again, okay, JoJo, you can get him back up and have him come into the game. And yes.
I think it tells you that they just don't want to use these guys. Andrew Suarez, not a guy that they trust in any situation.
This is why Connor Thomas
Casey
and Guillermo
Lawrence, not
Zuniga.
a guy that they trust in any situation. I'm totally with you. They don't have enough bullpen arms right now. Like, they've got guys that are starters, quote unquote, that are masquerading currently as bullpen arms because they don't trust their length that they're going to get moving forward from Adam Wainwright, from Zach Thompson, or from Matthew Liberatore, or honestly, Dakota Hudson. 4 of your 5 spots in your rotation right now, they don't trust that they're going to be able to get at least 5 innings from them. And when you have that kind of a situation, it forces you in some ways into having more long relievers on the roster than what you'd like to have. I just totally disagree philosophically with what they're doing right now.
All right, now
I disagree with it.
Now you're being ignorant.
I understand why they're doing it. I think it is wrong. I think what you should do instead is guys that are on your 40-man roster, it would not require a move. A guy like a Connor Thomas, a guy like Guillermo Zuniga, find out what they can do. I said all season, Alex, that your guy, Zach Thompson, it's crazy to think that he can be a starter at the big league level because look at what he did in the minors. The ERA was bloated. This is ridiculous. Well, he came up and he looks better. Maybe that's coaching. Maybe that's this defense. I can't explain it. But the same thing could be true for a guy like Guillermo Zuniga. When I look at the ERA, I'm like, whoa, don't touch that guy. He can't help you at the big league level. But I just saw Zach Thompson. The stuff plays. Guillermo Zuniga is striking out the world down in AAA right now. Let's find out if that can play up while he's in the big leagues. But instead, you give him one opportunity, sent him back down, and now we've never seen him since. Coming up next, Chris Kerber, the voice of the Blues, here on 101 ESPN.
Jamie and Randy here. Different real estate agents will sell your home for different amounts of money. Don't be fooled into thinking that all realtors are created equal, because they are not. Different realtors will get you different results, so the agent you choose to sell your home matters. The experience your agent has, the marketing, the database of buyers, the systems, and the capabilities of your realtor, they all matter. Why? Because how much you sell your home for matters to you. That's why I recommend that you call Gloria Lou with your home sold guaranteed realty.
According to MLS statistics, Gloria sells her listings for more money than the average agent, and she does it with less hassle. With 20 plus years of experience, our local real estate expert, Gloria Lou, knows how to get you the most money for your home. Guaranteed. Gloria also offers her sellers multiple selling options, so call Gloria Lou at 314-325-6888. That's 314-325-6888, or visit GloriaHasTheBuyers.com. That's GloriaHasTheBuyers.com. Gloria and seller must agree on price and possession date.
Need a new door? Not sure what to do? Call the tried and true Mosby Blue. Want quality work from an expert crew? Call the tried and true Mosby Blue. To make your home look brand new, call the tried and true Mosby Blue. Mosby Building Arts. We do doors.
Section.
Hey, gang, sorry I'm late. The other surgery went a little longer than anticipated.
Nah, you haven't missed much.
Oh, good. What's this guy getting? A car?
He's selling his kidney to get a new HVAC system installed.
An overpriced HVAC system. This is like the third person this week.
You don't have to sell your kidney to afford an HVAC system from Swissair Heating and Cooling. Ron, the Wizard of Comfort, will guide you to the lowest cost of ownership. Swissair offers a 29-point cooling system check for just $69. Swissair also uses only the best equipment, such as the new energy-efficient Daikin Fit system. Repair or replace, Swissair gives you the lowest cost of ownership. If your system does break down, Swissair will provide a temporary cooling system. No wonder Swissair has a 4.9 rating on Google. Call Ron, the Wizard of Comfort, at 636-500-COOL. That's 636-500-COOL. Or go to SwissAirSTL.com for the $69 29-point cooling system check.
Did you know the IRS is a super creditor? Hi, I'm Lance Drury with the Lance Drury Law Firm. The IRS is the only creditor that can create a bill for you without your permission, then drop the hammer and aggressively collect it by wiping out your bank account, seizing your assets, and levying your wages. No other creditor can do that, and this can all happen without a court approval. If you owe back taxes, you need to be prepared to face the super creditor. Don't just sit back and take it. Fight back. At the Lance Drury Law Firm, we know how to use the laws to your advantage and go toe-to-toe with the IRS. Our office is located right here in St. Louis. Contact the Lance Drury Law Firm today for a free consultation with me, or visit us at lancedrurylaw.com, or call 314-260-6120. That's 314-260-6120 to get started.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.
Club Car Wash has 2 new locations in the St. Louis area. One downtown on Gravois Avenue and the other in Monticello Plaza in O'Fallon. New members only. Unlimited washes are just $10 a month for the first 3 months. With over 25 locations in St. Louis, visit clubcarwash.com to find one near you.
Join the club. Football is back on 101 ESPN. The NFL season kicks off September 7th with a matchup between the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs and Detroit Lions. Your home for the NFL is 101 ESPN. Sports talk for St. Louis.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals beat the Oakland A's yesterday 6-2, and they go for a sweep tonight. 5:45 will be first pitch as Matthew Liberatore gets the start for St. Louis, and Paul Blackburn will be on the mound for Oakland tonight. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoff.autoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
And T-Bone, I'm BK. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by Chris Kerber. He's the voice of the Blues, joining us here on 101 ESPN. Curbs, how you doing today, man?
BK, I'm doing great today. How are you guys?
Doing well. Are you in Europe now, or are you about to head to Europe?
Nope, going to head to Europe, head to the airport here in just about an hour or so. Going to fly over to London to go watch Tim Ream play in the Premier League and catch a Fulham match, and then hopefully we'll catch Chelsea and West Ham afterwards on Sunday too. So a good soccer weekend coming up.
Curbs, have you done this before? This is I'll do, like my personal story on Premier League games. My now brother-in-law, then future brother-in-law, one of his buddies had tickets. They had this whole trip planned to go over to Europe. It was the week before my wedding. And this is in the middle of the COVID scare, so there's all that going on behind the scenes. And they offered me, they said, hey, if you want to, you can get these tickets. They're already paid for. All you got to do is get the travel. And because of COVID, we couldn't make it work because my wife was scared. Like, if you get COVID over there, you can't come back, and then we can't get married, all of that. Have you done a trip like this before, Curbs? Because this is a bucket list item for me.
Yeah, not like this. We took the family to Italy actually earlier this summer, which was amazing. And I've been to, when I was going into my senior year of high school, spent 3 weeks over in Russia with 30 other students from St. Louis, and I've been to Stockholm with the Blues in 2009, but nothing quite like this. And really the impetus was I became a fan of Fulham 6-7 years ago through Jim Woodcock and his work with Shad Khan and that organization, and Tim Ream, of course, was playing for him, so great reason. And I'd always get up and I'd watch the soccer matches, but I never had a team to sink my teeth into. So when we were watching Fulham play Aston Villa, I said, you know what? I'm going to pick this team. And, man, it's been a ride for 5 years. It's promoted 1 year, down the next, promoted. Well, last year they got promoted and then stayed up. But then, getting a chance to meet Tim a couple times, he's been kind enough to join us on 101. But obviously from St. Louis and all that, he signed a 1-year contract at the middle towards end of last year, and I wanted to make sure that not only I got over to see a game for Fulham at the Cottage, at Craven's Cottage, but I really wanted to make sure that I did where I could watch, also be able to see Tim play a home game there. So that's the impetus of it. Grabbed a couple of buddies and said, "What do you think, guys? Guys, weekend in London?" And they're like, "Yep, we're in."
Awesome.
That's the
Curbs, try and get on television in the match. Take your shirt off and wave it around in the air or something.
Oh, please do. Please do.
That's how we could get Chris Kerber on television at the match.
Well, now, the Fulham, there's a group of St. Louisans that are Fulham fans, and they gather at the Amsterdam Tavern to watch the games all the time. They created a Fulham St. Louis flag. So it's got like the St. Louis city flag with the rivers, but it's Fulham colors and stuff. So we're bringing that flag over to take some photos with the St. Louis flag over actually at Craven's Cottage.
You go, take the shirt off when you're there
I don't want to get on TV, but I don't want to, I'd like to not get kicked out in what's been my first and only experience so far, but we'll see what else prevails.
There we go.
I'm looking forward to hearing your review of that next week when you join us, Curbs. I want to hear how
I want the atmosphere.
English Soccer League, how that experience compares to what it's like to go to a game at City or any other professional American sport as well. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. All right, Curbs, the big news today for the St. Louis Blues, the organization has announced that Jamie Rivers, our buddy, our colleague, our friend, is going to be taking over as the in-game analyst on Bally Sports Midwest. I know you do a lot of stuff on the broadcasting side, not just as the play-by-play voice for us here on 101 ESPN, but also just with the St. Louis Blues. What are your thoughts on Jamie Rivers getting that opportunity with the Blues?
Listen, well, plain and simple, congratulations to Jamie. I mean, look, everybody that's listened to this radio station for the last few years knows he's got a great personality. He knows his stuff. He loves the St. Louis Blues. You know, another former Blue that managed to stay here. He's so tied in to the youth hockey side of things and what's current there through his Synergy hockey business. He's been on Bally Sports on the pregame side. He filled in for Panger last year when Panger's national schedule really started to broaden and stuff. So it's a natural step and a great step. And congratulations to Jamie, because as you guys know, I mean, Brandon, this is and Alex, like you guys, Tanner as well. Like you guys know how you started. I mean, you started as a producer for Kevin Wheeler, right, BK? Mm-hmm. And Alex, you started as a booth intern. You know, while you're still going, to grad school, and you work your way up to this, and this is no different. And sometimes it takes a little longer. Panger held on to that job for 14 years, and you never know when something like that's going to open up. So I think it's terrific for our Blues fans that are going to get to hear Jamie now more than just the pregame. It'll open up some pregame opportunities. We'll probably see some new faces filling in on the pregame and postgame and intermissions now when Bernie isn't there, whether that be Joey or some others. So I just, in the end, I'm thrilled for Jamie because, guys, I'm a big fan of when hard work pays off and you get the opportunity. So good news for that. That's settled, and now we continue to get ready for the season.
Yeah, and it's getting more and more exciting with that news, of course, for Jamie. And as you said, Kerbs, congratulations to him. But, speaking of jobs opening up, this training camp, I think, is going to be really intriguing. And we've talked about this before, but when you talk about the entrance of certain prospects and the hype around them entering camp now with jobs to be had, maybe not this season, but within the next couple of years, what does that do to a camp with these guys that are used to showing up to training camps, the regulars at the NHL level?
I'm not so sure, to be honest with you, that just about anybody should be really settled, if that makes sense. Like, I almost wonder, and in all honesty, I haven't talked to guys like Braden Shen and stuff about this, but there's going to be a natural sense of it's another training camp, okay? But if you go back to some of the postseason analysis, and you heard Braden Shen and Robert Bortuzzo and Brandon Saad and Justin Falk say that we weren't as much of a team as we needed to be. I think that's what's resonating with me as we go into camp. Craig Berube said that too. You've got a couple new assistant coaches. So in my opinion, there should be a little sense of not uneasiness, but maybe not so comfortable. Like, come into camp with a little bit of an edge. If you're one of the veteran players on this team, you better come into camp with an edge that wakes up the young guys, because you're going to need the young guys to win. And trust me, Braden Shen, Brandon Saad, Robert Bortuzzo, Falk, Krug, those guys don't want another year of missing the playoffs. Let me tell you something. A player never buys into rebuilding. Never. Like, hey, you're okay. You guys okay if you go in and lose a bunch this season and rebuild? No player is ever going to take that approach. And so, to me, the tone that the veteran guys set, and the leadership especially, in conjunction with Craig Berube and some of his new coaches and Steve Ott, I think that's a huge moment of training camp right from the start. And for whatever reason, it didn't seem to be there last year. This year it has to be there, and especially if you're relying more on young guys. You've got to make sure those guys are sharp.
Kerbs, we'll get you out of here on this. It's a question we're going to tackle in the 12 o'clock hour. If you could guarantee that one player on the St. Louis Blues in 2023 has a breakthrough season, and you can take that in any direction that you want. Maybe it's a veteran that's going to have their best season yet, or a young player that takes that next step in their career. You could guarantee one guy takes that step this season. Who would you hit the button to guarantee that for this year?
If I could guarantee it for one guy right now, I think it'd be Jake Neighbours. And I say that because my initial thought, do I go Kyrou? But I think Kyrou's already taken those steps. And now it's for him to keep adding to it. The question is for Jake Neighbours, what do you really have here? Are we solid third line? Do we have the offensive second line? I love the maturity of this young man. I love the attitude of this young man. He's a sponge. He soaks it up. He reminds me in many ways of the maturity of Barrett Jackman when Barrett was starting off in his NHL career, and I think that's a great thing. So if there's one guy that if I could put a wish on to guarantee that breakthrough, I think it'd be Jake, because also if that does happen, wow, is that a great sign and a great thing for the St. Louis Blues right now.
Curbs, enjoy yourself over in Europe, man. That's going to be one hell of a trip. I'm very jealous of you. We'll talk with you again next week and recap how everything went.
You got it, guys. Have an awesome weekend. Thanks for adjusting today.
You got it. That's Chris Kerber, voice of the Blues, as he joins us each and every Wednesday on BK and Ferrario. Just to put a recap on that, the news from today. Alex, I know we're both very excited. Jamie Rivers going to be taking over for Darren Pang. He'll be replacing Panger on the Bally Sports Midwest broadcast. Just a couple of quick seconds on this. My first experience with Jamie, my first exposure to him was working with him and Anthony Stalter when I moved back to St. Louis for the midday show. And at the time, I'm not going to be a fraud, I knew very little about Jamie, his personality, what he was going to be like. And so I'll kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. The first time that I produced a show for him and Stalter, it was a learning curve. We were trying to learn each other, how each of us operated. And there were a couple of moments, very few, but a couple of moments early on where we would butt heads a little bit. And we had one where he wanted to do something a little different in the open. And I was like, all right, well, then what do you want to do here, Jamie? And he kind of explained what his perspective was on how he wanted to operate the show. And from there forward, Alex, I'm not kidding, we never had another issue with each other ever again. It was like the third show that we had ever done. We butted heads for a second. We talked through it for 2 minutes before the show. We figured it out, and from then on, it was an unbelievable experience to work with Jamie. I considered him truly to be one of my good friends now because of that experience working together. I'm so happy for him, dude. You won't find a guy that explains the game better than Jamie Rivers does. We're going to learn a ton just from him being on these broadcasts and analyzing things as it goes. So I'm so happy for him. He's unbelievably deserving of this opportunity. And I'm excited for Blues fans because when you lose somebody like Panger, that is not an easy thing to replace, and Jamie is not going to try to replace who Panger was on the broadcast because you can't. Panger is one of one. But when you have an opportunity to add somebody like Jamie to these broadcasts, he's got to bring something that's a little different, and I'm super excited for that to be available for all of us.
Yeah, my first experience with Jamie actually goes back further than that. It was when I just got started at KMOX and hosting pre- and post games, and Jamie was just an alum at that time. He wasn't doing anything on the radio or he was just Synergy Hockey, and I had him on to do an interview with pregame with me, and it was outstanding. And then the Blues had him start to do some guest analysts on pre and post with me, and so I got to work with Jamie there, and then I got to do a podcast with Jamie before he started at 101, he and Darren Kimball. And at the time I'm thinking, man, this guy's incredible. You got the personality, you got the knowledge, you have the enforcer at the time, which I thought was important that Jamie lived in kind of that era. And then I got to 101 and got to work with him and got to do pre and post with him and got to do podcasts with him and just see the knowledge that comes from Jamie Rivers, not so much of what the game was, but what the game is going to be, the evolution of the game.
That's something that I really respect about him is it's easy to say back in my day.
Yeah.
Jamie's not that way at all.
Every team has a pre and post game analyst that was back in my day, and Jamie is not that guy. Jamie works with athletes that are playing in today's game, so he knows how the game evolves. Here's the biggest aspect of why I think Jamie makes the most sense for this team and why I think he's going to be phenomenal with it, because he has a relationship with the players. And a color analyst on a broadcast is not just there to break down the game. He's there to give people perspective into a locker room and into players' lives that they don't get. And players feel comfortable talking with somebody that they're around most, but also that they know played the game. And that's where Jamie Rivers comes into play. So I think people are going to be spoiled rotten with Jamie this season and moving forward as the analyst.
It's going to be good for everybody involved. You'll hear from him coming up at 2 o'clock. Jamie Rivers and Tanner Hendrickson hosting the Fast Lane coming up later this afternoon. So looking forward to that. Jamie will talk with you guys coming up at 2 o'clock. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll get to some questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Love this question. I want to preface it by saying I know this is not going to happen, but if the Cardinals were to make the playoffs, who would your postseason rotation include?
Oh my Jesus.
This is actually a really fun question. Because, again, we all know with the backdrop being it's not happening.
Yeah.
But if it did, who would you have in your playoff rotation? It's not going to.
You'd be playing in a wild card series, right?
Let's say you got 3 starters that you can throw out there.
I'd say
Michaelis is a guarantee.
He's starting game 1. Maybe game 2. The old days.
Can we be honest? Drew Rahm might be starting one of those games.
Whoa.
No, I think it would be.
He's not even up here yet.
Correct.
Liberatore and Dakota Hudson. I don't think you'd get to Dakota Hudson there. I think you'd be two
you
starts.
Think?
Yeah.
I think one of the games
they could win game 1 with Michaelis.
I think one of the games they would use a bullpen game. I'm not kidding.
That would be Liberatore.
They don't have
that would
good
probably
enough
be
bullpen
Liberatore.
to do that.
They'd go Liberatore and Zach Thompson.
Well, they've got 7 long relievers.
Yeah.
Casey Lawrence would be there at some point.
They'd have to have like JoJo go 3 innings, Gio 3 innings, Verhagen 3 innings. I think
Thompson and Liberatore could give you 4 each, and then Casey Lawrence gets the 9th.
I think it would be Michaelis game 1. I think Hudson would be game 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean
I think it would be Hudson game 2.
Been the better of their 4 rotation arms now.
Ridiculous, and it's not. It's totally understandable.
Yeah, like Liberatore's done it for 1 start.
Yep.
Thompson is just now going to start. And Wainwright's not going to be on the playoff roster.
Oh yeah, Waino's starting game 1.
I think it would probably be Michaelis, Hudson, Thompson, or Liberatore. I think right now it would be Liberatore.
Ugh.
By the way, can we talk about the fact that T-Bone sent us a text on Friday?
Well,
Said,
hey, from the fast lane, by the way.
Yeah,
caveat.
I couldn't believe you even sent the text. He sent us a text on Friday saying, hey guys, the fast lane had an interesting conversation about the Cardinals' schedule as it lines up and how they could do some damage and maybe get back to around 500 because of the opponents that they're playing. I could not believe you had the gall to send that to us.
Why? Because I'm thinking of content 3 days before our next show. I'm sorry.
The fortitude that it took to send that text message.
Is it content or daydreaming?
Just
both.
I couldn't even believe it.
I think it would lead to a conversation. You know why I believe that? Because BK just brought it up 4 days old.
That's fair. Touche, sir. From the 314. Guys, if you had the 6th pick in a PPR league this year, who are you taking? Fantasy Football League, 6th pick. The guys that are going top 5 in most drafts right now: Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, and then Austin Eckler. If I have the 6th pick, I'm taking Travis Kelce.
I'm taking Travis Kelce.
If he's not available, Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
If he's not available, I'm going with Jamar Chase or Tyreek Hill. So those would be the guys that I would try to take.
I told you
I'd probably go Chase over Hill, if I'm being honest, because I have serious concerns about Tua's health.
I told you a couple weeks ago that like after pick 3 or 4, I'm taking Travis Kelce. If I'm at 5, I'm taking Travis Kelce. At 4, I might contemplate taking Travis Kelce.
If you're at 2 and Justin Jefferson is off the board, and you're thinking to yourself, is it too early to take Travis Kelce?
No.
The answer is no. Go ahead. If you want to bet on somebody that you're pretty sure is going to be really good and is going to be significantly better than anybody else at his position, you can take Travis Kelce. It's not crazy.
Better than 90% of the players at the wide receiver position, too.
And he's old. Like, don't get me wrong, he's getting up there in age, and it's entirely possible that it drops off for him this year. It's also entirely possible Christian McCaffrey misses 10 games. Yeah. And it's entirely possible that Austin Eckler, instead of catching 60 passes this year, catches 30 passes and misses 4 games. Like, all of these guys come with some risk. Tyreek Hill, his quarterback, might play 8 games. Jamar Chase. Anybody know if Joe Burrow's playing the first month of the season? Anybody know what's up with his calf? Are we positive that Jamar Chase is going to be 100% healthy this year? No. So go ahead, take Travis Kelce if that's the guy that you want to take. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 636, guys, is Jamie still going to be on the fast lane after taking this job with Bally Sports Midwest? Yes. The expectation is that Jamie Rivers will continue to be on the fast lane, so you guys will be able to enjoy him not just on Blues games, but also on the fast lane moving forward.
Did a little double dip. Have him on the fast lane, and he's on the Blues game?
That's what the pros do. Host a show on a radio and then host pre and post game. Only he's on the broadcast. Never mind. You got where I was going with it.
Coming up in 15 minutes, you give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one's more likely. Don't forget, Masyn Winn will join the show coming up at 1 o'clock. But next, there is real risk and going out and doing what we have all asked the Cardinals to do in the free agent market this offseason. I looked at the last 8 years, the 8-year history of starting pitchers that got big-time money on the free agent market. I'll give you the results of that inquiry coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
I'll caution people that the risk that comes with these signings is scary, but you have to do it. And you know, unless you have developed them, unless you have them in your system, you're gonna have to take a chance if you want to win. That's where the Cardinals are right now. They have put themselves in this spot where there's no one to point to. You know, the days of Wainwright are over. The days of Carpenter are over. The days of Flaherty are over. You don't have that anymore. You have to have that.
That was Jim Bowden on with us a few days ago talking about how the Cardinals have to go out there and take the plunge. They got to stop. They got to stop snorkeling and start scuba diving into this year's free agent pitcher class. Nice. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, that scuba diving, though, it's scary. It is a scary proposition.
Get stung by a jellyfish, have to have your friend pee on you. You don't want to do that, man.
I saw that in Friends once. I had to do that for my sister, by the way. I peed into a cup and we poured it on her leg. She got stung by a jellyfish. I don't want to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about this year's free agent class. So,
title of our podcast. Let's start naming our podcast. Title of our podcast today, I had to pee on my sister.
There you go. By the way, once again, want to clarify, peed into a cup. Then we poured the cup on our way.
That's better.
We need clickbait.
We found out later that is actually an urban legend. It's not real. Don't do that.
Did you find out after you poured it on her? She's like, it still burns.
Correct. So
I just got pee poured on me.
Last night,
Bad for her now.
it was like 2 a.m. Baby didn't want to sleep. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do a research project for the show. Might as well be productive. So I looked into the last 7 off seasons of free agent starting pitchers. I said, you know what? We're talking about the Cardinals going out in the market, signing a long-term deal worth more than $15 million per year, right? Big-time money for a free agent starting pitcher. What's the success rate of those kinds of pitchers that have gone to market in previous offseason? Like, what are the Cardinals looking to acquire here? What's the likelihood of this working out for them? Not great, boys. Not great. So here are some of the names that have reached that criteria. Again, 4 years or more, at least $15 million in terms of the AAV. So we're talking about the big-time starters, right?
Let's play a game of would you rather have him on this team?
Let's play a game of would you pay this guy that money this offseason? Mike Leake.
No.
Jeff Samardzija.
No.
Jordan Zimmerman.
Hell no.
God, no.
Johnny Cueto.
No. No.
Zach Greinke.
Yeah.
He ended up actually working out really well. 4 years in Arizona, ended up with a 3.4 ERA. That was after signing a $35 million AAV contract.
I'll take that.
Yu Darvish.
Yeah.
Patrick Corbin.
No. Unless I get Soto with him.
I was going to say, Soto coming with him?
No. Nathan Eovaldi. He actually ended up to put it in perspective, he was one of the best contracts in this sample that I found. Hyunjin Ryu.
No.
Man,
wouldn't do that.
Other than injuries.
Mad Bum.
No.
Zach Wheeler.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the better contracts on this list.
You could have had him for Bader.
One of the biggest cautionary tales, Steven Strasburg. Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
Eduardo Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'd take him.
Kevin Gossman.
Yep.
I would really take him.
Robbie Ray.
I'd take him.
Yeah, I'd take him.
Even though he's out all year, but he, kind of won a Cy Young. So
I'll take it.
Year 1, really good. Year 2, not so great.
Yeah.
Carlos Rodon, Jacob deGrom, incomplete. Both of them have been injured for the vast majority of this season. Say all of that to say this. Of the 18 pitchers that are part of this sample dating back to the 2015 offseason, I would say 6 have really worked out for their club so far. Greinke, Darvish, Eovaldi, Wheeler, Cole, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Kevin Gossman. You could argue Robbie Ray. We're 2 years in. 1 year was basically a wash. The other year was pretty good for them. Had a 3.8 ERA for Seattle. So you could go either way with that. I'm going to say it's incomplete. I'm not going to count him as a clear cut. Yes, you would definitely do that deal again. That's 1 out of 3. You got a 33% shot to have a deal that you feel pretty good about. And even those deals that I just mentioned, not all of them were home runs by any stretch of the imagination. They were just yeah, we'd probably do that again. Nate Eovaldi, 4 years in Boston, had a 4.1 ERA. It's not great. It's like signing Miles Michaelis this year. Do you want to do that on a $17 million deal over 4 years? Maybe not, but you'd probably be okay with it if that's what you ended up with. Eduardo Rodriguez went MIA for half of the year last year. Just completely went away.
Jose Fermin?
Basically.
Nice.
Except not her. Just had a family situation. But in 2 years in Detroit has a 3.6 ERA, so you'd sign up for that probably. So not an overwhelming success, but you'd sign up for it. I say all of that to ask this question. When you hear that background of what these guys have done, does it make you any more or less squeamish about going into this year's market and paying one of Snell, Urias, Nola, Yamamoto, Gray, Giolito, etc., $20+ million on a per year basis?
No, it doesn't change my opinion one way or the other. You need to do it. I view this offseason as a must for the Cardinals to shop in that tier 2 and tier 3. You like the scuba diving or snorkeling euphemism. I'll give you another one. It's like playing blackjack, guys, where you have a 12 and the dealer's got a 4. You know the dealer's got a bust card, and you're probably like, if I just stay, they'll bust, and I'm going to win. But you also wonder, should I just hit? If I just hit, get a 9, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
You need to hit. Because if they flip over a face card and you bust, and then they had the bust card and you ruined it for the table, who cares? Because you are in a position to upgrade your roster. And the only way you're upgrading your roster, if we're not trading Gorman or Donovan or Nootbaar or Tommy Edman, any of these guys people don't want to trade, well, then you got to spend money. the way that you make this hurt less if the contracts don't work out is you shop in tier 2 and tier 3. Because if you just sit there and get 3 guys from tier 3 or tier 4 and they don't work out, sure, you could sit there and say, oh, well, we didn't put a whole lot of money out there or years, so we'll be out of this in a couple of years. Yeah, you're also going to be a bad team for a couple of years. If you get Aaron Nola and Yamamoto and one of those guys doesn't pan out, well, then all of my chips are pushed into that other guy that I paid a lot of money for. And if both work
and you
out,
hope one of your young guys ends up making up for the fact that you didn't get the results you expected.
Absolutely. These guys are, I mean, they're trying to make you competitive for the next couple of years, but they're also getting you to Tink Hence and TK Roby and Drew Rom and all of these guys, but you're also hoping to be competitive with them. But if you don't go after those guys because you're worried of past injuries and past subpar seasons for guys that got paid a lot of money, well, then you're going to go after James Paxton or one of these other mid-tier starting pitchers and hope that Miles Michaelis is a number 1, and you're going to be underperforming this year.
I think the Rangers are a good example of what you're talking about there, because this year, like, Dane Dunning has been a savior for the Texas Rangers. And if they didn't have him, man, they'd be in a rough spot right now, because when they went out and signed Jacob deGrom, they knew what the potential downside was. They knew. They went into it knowing, hey, this guy may start like 10 games for us this year. And our hope is by the time that we get to the playoffs, he's going to start game 1 for us, and he's that dominant starter that we've always seen him to be. Well, it didn't work out. It's been a complete disaster so far. He got hurt. Now he's not going to pitch the rest of the season. We'll see what happens with him next year. But they had the backfilling available to them. A guy like Dane Dunning has worked out really well. He started 20 games for him, has a 3.1 ERA. Who is that guy in the Cardinal system right now? Is it Drew Rom? Is it somebody else?
Dakota Hudson.
Is it Matthew Liberatore? Is it Michael McGreevy? Is it Gordon Graceffo? You got to have that guy available to you. And who is your Nathan Eovaldi? Who is your John Gray? Who is your Andrew Heaney? You can't just bet on one, because if you bet on one, you got about a 1 in 3 chance of being right. If you bet on 3 like we're talking about, chances are you're probably going to get at least one of those guys right. And if you hit on one, and maybe another one ends up being just okay, and the third one strikes out, well, now you just need to fill that one spot in your rotation, and maybe you do have a young guy that maybe it's by mid-season next year, they're capable of doing it. And then maybe 2 years from now, Tink Hence is not only a starter at the big league level, but maybe a really good starter who is filling into that rotation nicely as well. You've got to have those internal options. That's got to be the way to backfill. And that's what they missed out on this year. They had none of those guys ready to go at the big league level. So if they don't have them again next year, then it doesn't matter what they add in free agency, because when or if those guys get hurt, you're not going to be able to have the depth. I think they're better suited in that regard, though.
Yeah, and you just can't operate scared when it comes to anything in baseball. You can't operate scared on the trade front. You can't operate scared in free agency, because, yeah, there's a chance you're going to swing and miss on somebody, but to your point, that's why you're getting 3 guys. And you've put yourself in this position, unable to develop pitching, unable to have anybody that can come up through the system and just take on a role of a number 1. Not having modern-day pitching has put you in the spot to where, yeah, you're going to have to bite the bullet right now. You're going to have to go out there and you're going to have to spend big bucks. And you said 33% chance one guy works out if you sign one, and as you said, the odds can increase as you sign more. You got a 0% chance being a playoff team if you don't sign anybody. Yep. So they've put themselves in this position, so they can't be looking at it going, well, I mean, look at recent history. We failed on Mike Leake. You can't operate like that. If you're going to operate scared, you're not going to be a good operating baseball team in the major leagues.
So, Alex, you made the comparison to blackjack. I would make the comparison to a game of poker. The Cardinals are pot committed. When they kept Nolan Arenado, when they kept Paul Goldschmidt, they decided we are going to continue trying to contend. Next year, we're going for it. And when you're pot committed and you're thinking about going all in, but you're holding back one chip, what's the point of holding back the one chip? Man, if you lose, you lose. And you're losing it all, so let's bet big. Don't hold back a little bit because you're scared that you're going to lose this hand. Go for it and then see if you're able to win it. Because if you win, man, the ability to win big, it's there. Look at the Texas Rangers this year. They could win the World Series. They could. They're a team that when we go down the stretch run here, they are going to go into October and we're all going to look at them and say, when you count the 5, 6, 7 teams that have a real chance of winning the World Series going into the playoffs, they will be on that list. And it will be because they bet big last offseason, and then they continued to bet big at this year's trade deadline. They didn't let this opportunity go to the wayside. They said, hey, we got Corey Seager, we got Marcus Semien, We feel really good about those guys. We've got our internal options, position player-wise, that we have developed within this organization. We got super lucky with Adolis Garcia. Now we got to fill in the other spots that we were missing. They go out and get Aroldis Chapman. They go get Jordan Montgomery. They get Max Scherzer. Now it's like, okay, hot damn. This is a team that can win a World Series after all of the moves that we made in the offseason, all of the moves that we made at the trade deadline. Let's go for this thing. Let's see what this ends up looking like. The Cardinals have to do the same thing. It's scary as hell. You're scuba diving, and this is more like free diving. Watched that documentary the other day. Whew, would not do that, but you have to. You have to do it because that's where you are as an organization right now. You have to give yourself an opportunity to be next year's Texas Rangers. Come out of nowhere, and everybody's like, not sure. A lot of risk here. Let's see what it looks like.
This is scary to the point of BK's got a cup full of urine about to pour it on you.
Coming up next, you give us two options. We'll tell you which one's more likely here on 101 ESPN.
more likely to happen? They'll figure it out. BK and Ferrario's most likely to happen.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, let's play a game of more likely to happen. You give us two scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely. Guys, let's start out with this. More likely to be part of the Cardinals rotation in 2024. Julio Urias or Jose Quintana?
Oh, this is easy. Jose Quintana. I don't see Julio Urias being an option for them. I as bad as this sounds, I do think the Cardinals are a team that takes off-field stuff into consideration when signing. And maybe other teams do.
That's totally fair.
It just seems like the Cardinals are one of the premier teams that say, okay, but who is he outside of baseball? Yeah. Because
I mean, we know that's something they do. They take into account how you're going to fit into the clubhouse.
I only say it sounds bad because that's not really how you put a winning team together. Like, some teams will just say, bleep it, I don't care, we'll sign the guy. I mean, so the Cardinals have been bit by that in the past in terms of having guys that have had issues off the field, and I don't think they want to go down that path with somebody who's already had it. So I'd say it's Quintana because it's an easier trade.
Yeah, I think it's Quintana too. And I think he's making $13 million. I think there's a chance if the Mets trade him this offseason, they would eat half of it potentially.
They might eat all 13 mil.
You may have to give up a little bit more for them to do so than what we're expecting. But
I wonder if the Cardinals would trade that infielder that they got from the Orioles in the trade for Jack Flaherty. Prieto. I apologize for the pronunciation there, but he's hitting really well again now for the Cardinals down in AAA. Somebody like that could be the type of prospect that maybe you give up in a trade for Jose Quintana if they decide to eat some of that money.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's him because I think he would be a perfect target for the Cardinals. Instead of spending money in free agency, if you can get Quintana, who's a perfect, bring him in, have him as your number 4, and one thing that I think the Cardinals do way sometimes is they're familiar with him, is that they would look at that and go, okay, that's the perfect number 4 starter. And again, if the Mets are willing to eat some of that money just because they're looking to kind of set the books, that's the perfect guy to go and acquire rather than go out there and shop in a bin of James Paxton and guys like that. I'd much rather have Quintana. So I'm thinking it's definitely more likely him.
First of all, agreed. Second of all, have you guys seen how well Jose Quintana has pitched for the Mets since his return? They're 0-5 in his starts, which seems impossible because he has a 3.0 ERA. He would be the best starter again in the Cardinals rotation if he put up those exact same numbers here in St. Louis. He's giving them 6 innings basically every start. Of his 5 starts so far, 4 have been quality starts. We'll see him again here in St. Louis coming up on Thursday as he opposes Adam Wainwright. If the trend continues, Jose Quintana might have to lose that game because the Mets have yet to win a game in which he starts. So maybe Adam Wainwright gets a win on Thursday.
I feel like I just played the game of Clue and you just made all of the wrong picks and just lost.
Yeah. I like your thinking.
Quintana has never won a game for the New York Mets.
Right? You were bold.
5 opportunities. He is 0 for 5.
Who's the guy?
It's not his fault, but
who was the guy? Wasn't there a guy in Kansas City that had that too?
Jordan Lyles.
Yeah,
who's
the poor guy.
He was terrible though. He's had a 6 ERA.
He's had 3 seasons of it too.
By the way, to answer my own question, I think it's very clearly Quintana.
All right, more likely to happen, guys. Alec Burleson gets more starts in left field, or Brendan Donovan gets more starts at second base next season.
Burleson.
Yeah, I think
I like Alec Burleson. I'm a sucker for this guy, man.
You sucker for burliness.
Sucker for Burley.
It's the hair on the chest. That's got to be what it is. Jealous.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
I would definitely say more likely Alec
Burleson. It got weird in
too.
here, didn't it?
Yeah.
Did it? Was it uncomfortable?
I thought you were going to go his flow, because I could get on board with that.
No,
chest
hair? Flow. It's Taylor Motter.
Fair. That is
that waving in the wind when he's making plays at shortstop.
Chef's kiss.
Yep.
But I would say more likely Burleson in left. I think Gorman is almost at the same level as Donovan at second base, and I think you give Gorman the edge at second base just because he's got more power.
Can we be honest?
Yeah.
Could make a case that Gorman's better at second base than Donovan was.
Good. I thought about saying that, but I didn't want to feel like I was going out on a limb.
No.
So I'm glad we're on the same page. But I would think more likely Burleson because I just don't know if Donovan's starting in second base a lot. I think if he's starting next year, it's at DH or in left.
It's one of the reasons why I think it's been weird that people are like, hey, guys, so many players are playing out of position for the Who? played out of position for the Cardinals this year. Nolan Gorman is a second baseman now. If you think that he's a third baseman, well, tell me how he's playing third. Please, tell me how he's going to get over there.
Well, Nolan Arenado needs days off.
Exactly. Brendan Donovan, guys, we should view him as an outfielder for this team. That's what he's probably going to play the vast majority of his games at. Now, will he play second base? Sure. There will be opportunities there. Will he play at first or third occasionally? Maybe, yeah. He'll get an occasional start there. But the majority of his starts will likely come in the outfield or at DH, depending on what's going on with his arm going into next season. They haven't really had guys playing quote-unquote out of position. Tommy Edman, people wanted him to play shortstop. Well, he had a pretty good defensive shortstop at Paul DeYoung at the time, and he was a better center fielder than any of the alternatives. I think you could see him out there again. So I'm with you. I think that it'll end up being Alec Burleson.
More likely to be an all-star next year, Jordan Walker or Lars Nootbaar?
Lars.
Unbelievable.
I don't even need to explain it. I think that it's Lars Nootbaar. I called it this year that I thought that Lars Nootbaar was going to be an all-star. And if he could start, we got to figure out how to get him to go to his warehouse the week before the start of the season. Like, leave spring training with Nolan Arenado a week early. Go out to Arenado's warehouse, and the two of you guys start hitting together for a week.
To see if Nolan will let you bunk up with him in the offseason. Yeah. I'm sure his wife and kids will be fine with it.
Ollie, where's Lars and Arenado? They're not here today. Oh, yeah, we sent them to their lab. They're getting work in.
Frankly, you need to send everybody to that lab.
Well, last year, right at the All-Star break, that's when Lars Nootbaar went to go hit. And after the All-Star break, he went on this crazy pace down the stretch. It's the start of the season that he's got to get figured out. So to make an All-Star game, he's got to start the season a little bit better. So that's going to be the thing. But I think it's Lars Nootbaar. T-Bone, are you on the other side of this one?
Yeah, I think it might be Walker. I think if he has a big second year and comes in and adds more power, which I think is going to happen when he starts lifting the ball more, I think you're looking at a guy that he's had the buzz around him as being one of the top prospects in all of baseball. Cardinals fans know that. He comes in, he improves defensively. I can see the path for Jordan Walker forward. I don't know if Nootbaar is going to show, I know he's shown it lately, but I don't know if he's going to show enough power to really get himself in consideration, because he's going to be viewed more as a leadoff guy with good on base, maybe hits for average. And you know, chicks dig the long ball. T-Bone digs the long ball. So I'd say Walker.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go Nootbaar here. I think Walker's defense is going to hurt him in that All-Star bid. At least next year, because I can see that continuously growing. I'd say long-term, more All-Star appearances, Jordan Walker. But next year, Nootbaar.
By the way, I'll give credit where it's due. Jordan Walker's been better defensively over the last month or so. He has not been a total liability in the outfield, and really that's all you have to ask for right now. Yeah. Next year, the hope is, hey, could you be average defensively in the outfield? Right now, it's just don't be the worst defender in all of Major League Baseball, which is what he was for the first half of the season, unfortunately, for the Cardinals. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for more likely to happen. You give us two scenarios. We will tell you which one is more likely. Let's start out with this one, guys, from the 636. Guys, what's more likely? Tyler O'Neill starts in left field on opening day of next year, or he is on another team on opening day of next year?
I'd say he's on another team next year on opening day. I could see a scenario where they trade O'Neill and keep Carlson. Just because the value's not there in Carlson. O'Neill, they say we just need to trade him, and Carlson's your fourth or fifth outfielder. But I don't see any scenario where Tyler O'Neill's on this team anymore just because of the inconsistency in terms of ability.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I just can't see how you return with O'Neill next year. If you can't, even if you can't get him for even just a reliever, and they just, man, do we really want to take just a long shot prospect? Yeah, I think you do. I think you sell low. And I think I can see where the Cardinals go with Carlson and say, you know what, another injury-plagued year. It was in the paper today that, you know, his ankle's been bothering him ever since the injury in Boston. Maybe the Cardinals can kind of go, maybe that was part of the issues for him. Let's bring him back and try and recoup some value. I think it is definitely more likely Tyler O'Neill is not a Cardinal come 2024.
Totally agree. Sweep it from the 636. More likely that the Blues end up with multiple All-Stars, or they have one player finish as a finalist for a postseason award. So multiple players end up in the All-Star, or somebody ends up as a finalist for a postseason award this year on the Blues.
It's like postseason, like a playoff award, or just like at the end of the season? Oh, okay, I got you. I'm gonna say it's more likely that they have multiple All-Stars. I don't see how because you don't have a Selke candidate, in my opinion. You're not going to win the Art Ross. You're not going to win the Norris.
Maybe a Lady Bing.
Maybe a Lady Bing in terms of gentlemen. Yeah, very true. And
Brandon's a good guy.
Depending on how...
Oh, he went side?
Hey, relax.
Sorry.
Relax.
Yeah. See, that's why he's getting Lady Bing.
Another one that I could see, and this is solely dependent on how good these guys are, is a Jennings Trophy of Bennington and Hofer. But again, you got to have both of them to have the...
Alex.
What? Hofer was great down the stretch last year.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a
This
Vezina.
defense ain't going to allow them to
No,
get
that's
Jennings.
very true. It's not. But I said, the only one that I could see as most likely out of those scenarios, but I'm taking multiple All-Stars.
Are we doing this already?
What?
It's bleeping mid-August,
Dude,
man.
I almost cut your
Did
mic
you guys
off.
hear what I said? I said if there was a most likely postseason award, it would be that.
Yeah, for the team that struggles with goaltending in the regular season.
What other award are they going to win if there's a postseason award?
A Lady Bing, man.
Get the hell out of here. You ain't going to get that. Lady Bing also takes into consideration of not taking a lot of penalties, and they're going to take a lot of penalties.
Brandon Saad doesn't take many penalties.
It's because he's not getting the ice time.
Yeah, well, maybe.
It's going to be the All-Stars. It's going to be somebody on the offense, and
it's not going to be a defenseman.
It might
it's
be
not
a
gonna be
goaltender.
Bennington. I can see two
Kyrou and
guys.
Buchnevich could totally end up in
I was even going to throw Vrana in
I
that
was
if
going
he
to
has
say
a great
Kyrou and
year.
Verana.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they're going to
I could see
be more
Kyrou
goal
and
Not
scoring.
Buchnevich.
I think Bush could be up there, but I think a lot of people like Vrana's the kind of guy that could like go in the All-Star break and go, "Whoa, this guy's like top
If
5
you're
in
putting
goals."
up 25 goals
And
by
it's
the
a
All-Star
reclamation
break.
story.
Yeah.
People get it. Yeah,
Everybody
I could
feels
see a
good
Booch
about it.
going over a Kyrou, depending on how Booch plays. It's either going to be Kyrou or Booch and Verana, if that's how it goes.
Speaking of the Blues and guys that could take that step this season, if you could lock in, guarantee it, one Blues player that has a breakthrough season, maybe that's a veteran that takes another step, maybe it's a young player that has that breakout season, however you want to take it, one player you could guarantee lock it in today. They've got a breakthrough year in 2023. Who are you choosing? We'll give you our examples coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario back with you to talk about my insurance agent, Tracy Bibb, her team at Allstate. They truly are the best. I was with a prior insurance agency a few years ago before I switched over to Tracy, and it wasn't bad, but it was to the point that I never had communication with them. The prices would always go up every year, and I had no idea the reason that they were going up. Next thing you know, I talked to Tracy, explained my situation, changed all of it. And over the last few years being with Tracy Bibb, I'm talking about constant communication. When we've had issues, whether it's with my wife's car or something with our house, Tracy's always available for us, giving us the breakdown of what the umbrella our insurance agent covers. So that's what Tracy Bibb can offer. They preach all the time. It's not a matter of if something happens, it's when something happens. And when it does, you want that insurance agent to be available for you. So give Tracy her team a call today. Tell them that I sent you. Ask for a free non-committal quote, 314-328-4260. Tracy will take care of the rest. She truly is the best. 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals beat the Oakland A's last night 6-2, and they go for a sweep tonight. 5:45 will be first pitch as Matthew Liberatore's on the mound for St. Louis, and Paul Blackburn will get the start for the Oakland A's. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find a road shop 24/7 at Londoff.com, LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. So if you could lock in one player for the St. Louis Blues this year to have a breakthrough season. Now, it could mean something different for everybody, right? A breakthrough season for Jordan Kyrou looks very different than a breakthrough season for Jake Neighbours. Jake Neighbours, it would be considered a breakout. Jordan Kyrou would be considered, hey, he took that next step from being a really solid NHL player to, holy bleep, that guy might be a perennial all-star. So different players have different types of seasons when you think about what this criteria means. But Alex, if you could lock one in today, you could guarantee it. You got the pixie dust that you're sprinkling onto one of these players. Who are you putting into that category of guaranteeing they have a breakthrough season in 2023?
It's Robert Thomas.
Hell yeah, brother. That's my guy.
Hell yeah, brother. Now, the other one I considered was Scott Perunovich, but the difference here is Scott Perunovich, at best, is a top 4 defenseman, and your power play gets better, and then Torrey Krug can be expendable. Robert Thomas changes the outlook of your team. Now you have a number 1 center who's good offensively and defensively. If we're talking breakthrough, I'm considering that to be a guy who could push 100 points in a season, Robert Thomas, because got pretty close to it a couple of years ago. And you're also getting the defensive prowess that you hope Robert Thomas becomes. You now have a true elite number 1 centerman locked up for the next 7 years at $8.5 million. He's the one I would put all of my money into trying to be that number 1.
Before I get to yours, Tanner, because I know you've got somebody different, I was on the same line of thinking as Alex Ferrario.
Oh, yeah, brother.
Robert Thomas is the single most important piece of this Blues build. And the reason why I say that is because, Alex, we've talked about this in the past. When you look at the teams that go on to win a Stanley Cup, yeah, you can look at their number 1 defenseman. That isn't necessary. But look at the number 1 centers that those teams had. Look at the guys that led that team. The vast majority of the time, it was a star. Like maybe not a superstar, but a star-level player that had at least one quality that you can look at and say, that's what made them special. We know what that quality is for Robert Thomas. It's his passing ability. He's one of the best pure passers in the sport already. If he can take that next step and be somebody that they can trust in all facets of the game, be a guy that drives offense, but also somebody that is responsible in his own zone, and somebody that they can trust going up against the opposing team's top line, man, that completely alters the expectations of not just this year's team, but the next 10 years of St. Louis Blues hockey.
To be good, to be considered one of the elite number 1 centers in the game, you got to be good at something. Think of them. Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid. They're great at offense. Patrice Bergeron, Ryan O'Reilly, Elias Lindholm. They're great at defense. The next step or the breakthrough season for Robert Thomas combines both of those. We know that this guy has the potential to be a 75, 80-point player. He just did it. We also know he can be good defensively. He was a second-line center behind Ryan O'Reilly the year that they nearly beat Colorado. Combined those and breakthrough, you're talking about an elite centerman making his presence known in the NHL. And again, for the next 7 years at $8.5 million as the cap rises.
I was about to say, that's the other thing, is that deal will suddenly look like a steal for the Blues if he's able to become the player that we think he can be.
Lindholm's going to get $9.5 million on the market. If Thomas is better, which he can be better than that, and younger for $8.5, your team looks a lot different 3 years from now.
All right, T-Bone, Alex and I have the same guy. It's Robert Thomas. If I could lock one guy in that he makes the biggest difference for the Blues, if we guarantee that he takes that step, that would be my pick. Who would be your pick to be that player?
I'd go Parayko. I think he's been underwhelming since the Cup run year, and since Pietrangelo left, he's supposed to be that alpha dog. It's just been too inconsistent, dealing with a back injury. And a guy that I look at and I go, man, it feels like this contract's been a bust so far, and they shouldn't have given him that contract. I think if he can take that step and break through and be more of that alpha dog that Army was envisioning when they handed him that contract extension. Look, his partner, he's going to need help with his partner. Nick Leddy's going to have to follow him if Parayko's going to take that step. But there are times where you can see why the Blues really like Colton Parayko. I think you saw that at the end of last season, where he was playing really good hockey by the time we got to the end of the season, but those games weren't mattering at that point. Can he take that step and be a guy that we know he's going to be on the ice in defensive zone shifts? He's going to be the number one guy for the St. Louis Blues. Can he take that next step to where you look at him and go, yeah, okay, this is the guy that we were envisioning? Because if he can put that together for a full season, I'm not saying the Blues' defensive issues are going to be solved, but they definitely look a lot better than they did last year.
I like that one, and I think if he takes the breakthrough season and has what he did in 2019, you're talking about a team that just got significantly better defensively. If I had to pick a defenseman, though, mine was going to be Scott Perunovich. Yeah. Just because I think that does so much for this team. One, you found a guy who could quarterback your number one power play. He had 4 points in 6 playoff games, and a lot of those on the power play, which makes Torrey Krug expendable, which opens up $6.5 million. And if he plays at least sound defensively, you're talking about a top 4 guy that you might also be able to move on from Nick Leddy.
Let me ask this in a different way now, because we both agree, Alex, Robert Thomas would be the best thing for the Blues. You say Colton Parayko, Justin Falk is another one that I think you could go with in this capacity, or Scott Perunovich. There's a lot of players that you could go with as if this player takes that step, it completely changes what we're thinking about for the Blues in 2023. Who's the most likely to do it, though? Who is the guy that you think is most likely to take that step this season?
I actually would probably go...
I would go with what Chris Kerber said earlier today, by the way.
Jake Neighbours?
I think I would, too.
I think Jake Neighbours is the most likely to player, not to become a 25-goal scorer and become a perennial all-star or anything like that, but to become a guy that you can count on to be a third-line winger that is responsible and plays exactly like you expect him to. I think he is the guy that is most likely to take a significant step from the player that we saw a year ago to the player that we're likely to see for the next 5 to 7 years.
I actually think it's going to be Robert Thomas. If I were to take a most likely one to do it, it's because Robert Thomas kind of had a snap back to reality moment last season where you were the number 2 center.
Gravity.
What?
Oh, there goes gravity.
Snap back to reality. T-Bone?
Eminem?
There you go.
Hey, look at you. Hell yeah, brother. Thomas had the moment last year where he came into the season as the number 2 centerman, probably wondering if he was going to be that if O'Reilly was coming back, and then all of a sudden you were the number 1 centerman for a team. And that's not an easy thing to figure out in the middle of an underwhelming season. Now you're going into the year expected to be the number 1 centerman. The training in the offseason has gone that direction. You know going into the year that you are going to be one of those leaders. I think if there's a most likely candidate to take that step, it's Robert Thomas. We've seen spots of the offense and the defense. I think this could be the year that I would say Robert Thomas just took that next step.
Yeah, I think I would agree with BK and Curbs. I think it could be Jake Neighbours because he at least when we've talked to him, he seems to have the hockey smarts, understands the game. You hear Craig Berube rave about him when he was up with the Blues this year. I think he becomes more consistent. Again, I don't think he's going to be like you said, 20, 25 goal scorer. Can he be like 10 to 15? Can we start to put him in pen for that?
Yeah.
I think you can. I think the expectations going into last year were too steep for him. I think this year they're going to be more down to earth and you're going to expect less from him. And I think he could be a guy that surprises you and takes that next step.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line. You guys can always get involved in the show there. By the way, we're on YouTube if you want to check us out there. At 101 ESPN STL is where you got to find it. We do have a chat over there. A lot of the people watching along throughout the day are getting involved in that. They're kind of basically serves as a text line, but you guys can interact with everybody else that's watching over there on YouTube at 101 ESPN STL. And if you miss any of the show, you can check it out afterwards on YouTube. The live stream just becomes a podcast in video form for you over there. So subscribe, make sure you like it, and then share it with your friends as well. It's all on YouTube at 101 ESPN STL. Coming up in a little more than 10 minutes, we'll talk to Masyn Winn, Cardinals' top prospect, shortstop prospect. He's getting closer and closer to his big league call-up. We'll catch up with him, learn a little bit about the player and the person at 1 o'clock. But next, it's time to dive into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. story that might end up being Chris Kerber and his buddies here in a few days. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Time to dive into the junk drawer. Masyn Winn, Cardinals top prospect, will join us coming up in a little more than 5 minutes. Share that with your friends. Masyn Winn will learn a little bit more about the baseball player and the person coming up at 1 o'clock. Guys, 2 American tourists were found sleeping after a heavy night of drinking at the top of the Eiffel Tower on Monday. This took place right around 9 a.m. The guides were doing their rounds, and they called the security guards, of course, because these men were stuck because of how drunk they were at the top of the Eiffel Tower.
Stuck because they couldn't get up?
After paying for an entry ticket around 10:40 p.m. on Sunday,
stuck on the Eiffel Tower,
they hopped the security barriers while climbing down the stairs from the tower's top. Firefighters were sent to recover the gentlemen because they were stuck on the Eiffel Tower. That would be horrifying.
I'm confused. How were they like they got stuck on something, or like they just couldn't get down?
They were hammered.
No, but like is their like foot caught on something on the Eiffel Tower and they like just can't move, or they were just hammered and like couldn't get down?
I mean, the way that it sounds
like they're just hammered and couldn't figure out how to get down.
Yeah.
Respect.
I would also say it's probably not the most enjoyable thing to be like dangling on the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, but if I'm gonna get plastered and have to lay somewhere and get stuck, the Eiffel Tower would be pretty cool.
I mean, it would be a sweet view.
No.
Oh my God, yeah. I did the Eiffel Tower in Vegas.
That's the only way you're getting me up there.
I'd have a panic attack.
Yeah, but you're not when you're drunk.
No, I would, because I'd be more nervous that I would fall.
Who's the most likely somebody that is associated with 101 ESPN most likely to pull a stunt like this?
Oh, we all can say the same at the same time.
BK.
One, two, three.
Jamie Rivers.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? He's probably done this.
The funny thing, Jamie could totally convince me to do it too.
Oh, yeah. Jamie would pull me into the fight.
He would be the one that is most likely to get me to do something
Jamie and Carrie
like this.
would be able to pull me into the fight immediately. Probably Stalter. Stalter's got that Italian motivation that works.
Stalter would do it. Stalter's the guy that you call when you've got a body to bury, but he's also the guy that you call when, like, you're about to do something stupid, like this, and you're like, hey, Staltz, you just have to say yes to whatever it is I'm about to ask. And he would say, all right, fine. As long as it doesn't get back to me, as long as it doesn't affect my kids or family at home, we're good.
If you got a body to bury, just call an Italian.
Yeah,
that's how it usually works.
We've got a lot of us here on this station, by the way.
Yeah, we run this. Not you, Tanner.
I'm Swedish.
I mean, Rock is an Italian.
Yeah.
Is Tam Italian?
No, I don't think it's McKernan.
My last name's Kylie.
Isn't Mick? Isn't that like Irish?
Yeah, I was saying.
Again, just because you have an Irish last name, somebody speaking from experience here, does not mean you are exclusively Irish.
I don't know. Kylie's Irish. Is it? Doesn't sound Irish.
Mick is always like Irish.
Irish or Scottish.
I would never assume Kylie is Irish.
Marshy would do this, by the way.
Oh, for sure.
No, see, I think Marshy's a little reserved on this. I think Marshy'd be like, no, I'm not doing that.
Man, you don't know Marsh.
No, I do know Marsh. I've worked with Marsh. I actually think I was I taught a class with Marsh.
I've gone to concerts with Marsh, and I think I could convince him after a concert to go to the Eiffel Tower. Like, buy a ticket to go to Paris, and then after the whatever it is 7-hour flight, we could then climb the Eiffel Tower.
Marshy's reasonable, and I think he would reason with it.
Have you met Marsh?
I did. I worked with Marsh for multiple seasons on the Blues.
Have you been with Marsh outside of work?
I think once. I think in Lindenwood.
Have you been with anybody outside of work?
Yeah. Literally, we go to Alton every year.
Yeah, but that's for work.
Believe me, I know it's for work. Otherwise, I wouldn't go. With you is what I meant.
No, you meant all the above.
No, I would. Yeah.
I think Alex doesn't like us. I think that's what we're learning in this segment. Alex doesn't hang out with anybody from the station.
To be fair, I've never done anything with BK outside of work.
Really hangs out unless it's work thing outside of the station.
I used to hang out with Stalter all the time. Before he had
but you were like the guy that
cheaper by the dozen going on at his house. Me and Stalter used to watch the game on Sundays together.
Well, there's your answer. When you got kids, it changes, man.
It does.
Probably would have hung out with people 3 years ago.
No, you won't.
Yeah.
No.
Just ask people to hang out and they never do.
I don't believe you.
Thanks, Ryder.
I hang out with Ryder. We go to concerts
I've asked
together.
that man to hang out with me multiple times. You know what he says? No, I got stuff going on.
Yeah, concerts. Go to a concert every once in a while, dude. And I'm not talking country. I'm not talking about the Retinator. You got to go.
I didn't go see the Retinator.
You got to go
It's
see
Nickelback.
some of
What are you
some of
talking
the rock
about?
bands.
Went to Nickelback. Fantastic. Great concert. I was deaf afterwards, actually.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so. What does the value of Tommy Edman mean for the Cardinals next year? And how does that compare to his trade value on the open market? We'll get into that coming up at 1:15. But next, Cardinals top prospect Masyn Winn joins the show here on 101 ESPN.
Shield Studio on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, do you think T-Bone actually reached out to Masyn Winn, or?
Hell no.
Yeah.
You be careful what you say.
I think he just did the Brian Braun thing where he's like, hey, we got him.
Yeah, and again, who gave T-Bone that number?
Sometimes I'll send T-Bone numbers to reach out to, and I know how this works. He's not interested in having them on for the show, so I'll say, you know what? I'm not even going to reach out. I'll tell BK that I reached out to that individual.
Hey, that's a typical producer's move. I've done that one plenty of times.
Been there, done that myself as well. But he says, I'll reach out. I'll get to that. Don't worry about it, BK. And then I ask him, I circle back, and I'm like, hey, man, did you ever reach out to so-and-so? He's like, oh, never heard back. They weren't available. Must not have gotten back to me. All right, cool, no problem. Then we all move on. And T-Bone, in the back of his mind, is thinking, got him again. I think that's what he did here with Masyn Winn.
Well, props to you, buddy.
We're hoping to be joined shortly by Masyn Winn, Cardinals' top prospect, shortstop prospect, and we hope to see Masyn Winn very soon in the big leagues. But before we get to that, Alex, let's talk a little bit about Tommy Edman, because that's who is currently serving as the Cardinals' shortstop of the present before Masyn Winn arrives. Tommy Edman's been playing really well lately. If you look at his overall numbers on the season, he is now considered to be an above-average hitter on the year. I feel like Tommy Edman, we do this every year with him, where we're like, maybe this is the season where you kind of move on from him next year as an everyday player, and you want him to be in that like super utility role, right? I do wonder going into this offseason, does Tommy Edman have more value to the Cardinals as a player, or does he have more value as a trade asset for the Cardinals? How do you view him long term?
I think he's valuable to the Cardinals, but I would say he's more valuable in terms of a trade asset because it lessens the amount of money and ability you have to focus on all these areas you're trying to upgrade via free agency. You might be able to address a high leverage bullpen arm for you in the offseason with Tommy Edman, and you might be able to get a number 4 or number 5 with Tommy Edman as the main piece of a trade in the offseason. And the only reason I'd look at this and say he's more valuable via trade is because I feel like you have a Tommy Edman with Brendan Donovan. Now, you can use both, obviously, but you also made trades for a couple of guys that are also utility pieces that are hitting really well in AAA. So JC, I believe, had another big home run last night, or it was a double that scored a couple of runs. I think you look at Tommy Edman and say we could get assets back with this and still have the utility pieces on our roster.
And the guy that really determines all of this is Masyn Winn, because his future in St. Louis is something worth getting excited about. If you look what he's done so far this year, he spent the entire season down in Memphis. He's 21 years old. He's batting .285 on the season, and the power is really starting to come around for Masyn Winn as well. He's hit 17 home runs so far this season. He's got an OPS over 800, and we know he's got one of the best arms, not just in the Cardinal system, but in all of Major League Baseball. Masyn Winn, Cardinals' top prospect, shortstop prospect for the Memphis Redbirds, joining us now via the 101 ESPN hotline. Masyn, we appreciate the time today, man. Know you're a very busy guy down there. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I really appreciate y'all having me. Just got to the field, getting ready for another day. Just looking forward to it.
Masyn, one thing that I wanted to ask you about is when we talk about you with anybody around the Cardinals, they don't talk necessarily first about your on-field ability, although that is quickly brought up. They talk about who you are as a person inside of the clubhouse and how people inside of the clubhouse gravitate towards you, your energy, your infectious personality. Where's that come from? Where's that energy and that personality come from for you?
Honestly, I think it's just me being from Houston and being from Texas. I've always been, playing a lot of sports, being real competitive, made a lot of friends throughout, played 3 sports growing up, and I've always been very talkative, very high energy. But especially baseball wise, it's a lot of fans don't think it's a lot of fun, so I try my best to make it as much fun on and off the field as possible.
Is that something that you bring onto the field with you? We've seen that with guys like Lars Nootbaar, Harrison Bader, where they play with that energy and they talk about how that's something that's important to them. Is that the case for you as well?
Oh, 100%. For me, it's if I'm playing dead, I'm probably just not right for the day. I think me being high energy, laughing, joking, talking to my teammates, I try to keep everybody involved. If the pitcher, if he likes when I talk to him, then I'll talk to him every pitch. If not, I'll just talk to my guys out in the outfield or on the infield, just keeping everybody on their toes. But yeah, it's I've been called the Energizer Bunny a few times. That's just something that kind of rolls with me. It's something that comes with my game.
So Masyn, at the beginning of this season, and of course last year, a lot of fans saw you and Jordan Walker just continue to develop and grow through the system together. I imagine you two being together on a team is kind of like a party for your teammates around. Am I right there?
Oh, 100%. I've heard Jordan's a little bit more quiet when I'm not around. But, anytime I'm there, I kind of force him to talk, and we get going, and it's always a good time on the field with him. Watching him play the game day in and day out is a lot of fun, and I think seeing that in the big leagues has been a lot of fun this year. I can't wait to we're throwing that line together.
That's what I was going to ask, Masyn. I'm sure you keep track of how Jordan's doing throughout the season, but does that motivate you even more to try and get to the bigs when you see what Jordan Walker's doing?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we talk quite often. We play basketball 2K a lot, so we're always talking mess on there. But, once I get there and, see that guy and the rest of the teammates up there, I'm sure it'll be, a dream come true. I'm just, I'm getting excited just thinking about it a little bit. But, he's my guy. So anytime we're on the same field together, it's a lot of fun.
Who's the better 2K player between you and Jordan Walker?
No doubt me. I mean, it's funny. I'm the short guy and he's the big guy, but I usually end up making a center and he makes a point guard. So I gotta carry the squad on my back a little bit.
Masyn Winn joining us here on 101 ESPN. Masyn, I wanted to talk a little bit about you on the field this year. I mean, since May, you've been on a complete tear down in Memphis, and we don't get to see all of the games, but we've heard a lot about it. Batting 300 since May. What has helped for you offensively? What's clicked since early May for you?
I started off the season real rough and then made a stance adjustment, a little bit more upright now, working more towards the ball, swinging with some more authority. I think, a lot of players like myself, not the biggest guy in the world, we get into the mindset that we have to be the single guy, we have to walk, we got to get on base for our teammates. But I think sometime throughout the year, I want to say Indianapolis, our hitting coach just came up to me and was like, dude, you're a guy that can drive the ball into the gas and drive the ball to the fence. And, I kind of got that back into my head, kind of a high school mindset, and started swinging for it a little bit more. And I think that's the biggest difference. I think it's just really a confidence boost that I needed.
Speaking of confidence, Masyn, in a matter of a season going from last year to this year, you transitioned quick through A-ball to AA to AAA. As a player, what have you learned about yourself going through those three different levels of the minors?
I've definitely noticed that when I get to a place, I usually start off a little rough, and then once I catch up to the game speed and get some games under my belt, I'm usually pretty good. But I think the biggest thing I've noticed is that at each level, I mean, it's still just baseball. I was facing 99 to 100 in low A, high A, double A, and now in triple A. So it's the same game at each level. They still have to throw it over the plate.
Masyn, we see the numbers. We see what the development has looked like from the outside looking in. You're the one that's actually going through it, though, on a day-to-day basis, the development of what the grind looks like as you're trying to get through the minor leagues. Tell us a little bit about your development as a hitter, and with Russ Steinhorn and some of the other guys that have been involved with your hitting development. What has that process been like? Take us through some of that process.
It's been good. I mean, coming out of high school, going to the alt site, I had a very, very little league high school swing, definitely uppercut style that, it might have worked in high school when you're facing 80-mile-an-hour heaters, but whenever we're facing, 97-mile-an-hour rise balls, some changes gotta be made. So, like you said, Russ Steinhorn really helped me a lot, and another big name for me has been Daniel Nicolaisen. He's with the big league team now, but he's a big analytic guy and kind of knows the numbers, and, I know my body, so us mixing together I think has really helped. And, anytime he comes in town last year, and he was my hitting coach in low A, just him kind of setting up some video and helping me look throughout my swing. I'm more of a visual learner, so it's been really big for me. I think he's been a big reason why I'm at where I'm at.
Masyn, you said that dirty word. Here in St. Louis, some of the fans hear the word analytics and immediately turn it off. When you are at the plate or when you're going through your pregame prep and they hand you some of those numbers that you're going through, is there stuff that you gravitate towards and then others you're like, you know what, you can leave that be there. That's not something that I need to be thinking about at the plate. What's that process like as you get some of those numbers put in front of you?
For sure. I mean, I think myself-wise, I like to look at my strikeouts. Me being a top of the lineup or just not the biggest power hitter in the world, I don't need to be striking out a whole bunch. So that's a big number I look at. And, I usually like to look at the pitcher we're facing. There's a stat called vertical approach angle, which is how the fastball is entering the zone. And, if it's a low number, I know it's going to be a really hoppy guy, a guy with a fastball with a lot of ride. So, got to stay on top of that. But, no, I try not to look too much at numbers. I mean, other than that, those are really the two stats that I look at. Other than that, I think it's just a lot of eyewash.
Masyn, the other element of your offensive game that I know has a lot of people excited is your speed. I think last night you had a triple for Memphis. Do you know in games how much of a difference maker and a difference factor that your speed is?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you got a guy like Luke and Baker over there at first base. I mean, he probably couldn't play shortstop. So, for me, I think speed is the biggest for me while I'm on defense. I try to wear the lightest cleats I can possible to try to make every play I can. I think covering ground, and I think it's pretty well known that if I get to the ball, the dude should be out at first base. So for me, I think speed is the biggest on defense. That's where I usually try to really lock it in.
Well, what about on the base path, Masyn? Have you taken a different approach in terms of attempting to steal bases or taking those extra bases when the ball's put in play?
Oh, 100%. I mean, scoring from first on a single, if I'm stealing, if I'm on the move or a double or something like that. Stealing-wise this year, I haven't been running too much, but, I think it's definitely a big, got to get some of the guys behind me some stakes. I mean, if I'm on first base and they hit a double, I'm trying to give, whatever hitter that is, I'm trying to get him a ribby every time.
Masyn Winn is our guest for just another couple of minutes here on 101 ESPN. Masyn, who do you emulate as a player, if anybody? Is there a guy that you watched growing up where you say, that I tried to take some pieces of his game and implement that into who I am as a player?
Well, funnily enough, I actually grew up probably the biggest Marcus Stroman fan in the world. I think his mindset, obviously him being a pitcher, but his catchphrase, height doesn't measure heart. I mean, that's really stuck with me for a long time, especially up here. I mean, you got some donkeys on every team, so I'm never going to be the biggest guy on the field, but, I like to play with a lot of heart. I like to play really hard, a lot of energy. And then I think on the position side, I'm from Houston, so I was a big Jose Altuve fan. So, and once again, he's another short guy. So just watching how he plays the game. I mean, he's got some juice. He can run. Plays defense, plays hard. Those two guys have been really big for me growing up.
Masyn, final one from me, and we're all hoping and anticipating your call up at some point before the end of this season. If and when that happens this year, what are you hoping to, I don't want to say accomplish, but just get a taste of before the season ends this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I do get called up this year, I'm really just looking forward to getting my feet wet and trying to compete up there with the best. I mean, that's where I think I belong long term. So, I'm going to have to catch up to speed up there and try to get my feet planted and stick up there for a long time.
Masyn, final thing, we'll get you out of here on this. You're talking to a lot of Cardinals fans right now on the radio here in St. Louis. If you could have one message for Cardinals fans about Masyn Winn's future in St. Louis, what would it be?
Oh, it's bright. It's bright for sure. Since I got drafted, I mean, the fans to me have been, I can't, I'm a little biased. I think we do have the best fans in the world, but, as far as how they've treated me and how the support that they've put out, I mean, it's been fantastic. And, I want to put on a show each and every day for everyone that's watching, If they might only be able to come to one game, I want that one game. I want them to see something special out of Masyn Winn.
One thing we got to have you work on. When you get up here to St. Louis, Masyn, you got to do what Patrick Mahomes did in Kansas City. You got to get a Whataburger to the St. Louis area, all right? You got to work on that.
Oh, got to. Come on.
Yeah, bring multiple of them if you don't mind, Masyn. We need a lot of them around.
Masyn, we appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much for hopping on with us today. We're looking forward to being able to watch you on a nightly basis here in St. Louis. Keep doing your thing down in Memphis, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Appreciate you guys. Thank y'all so much.
Awesome. Got it. Thanks, Masyn Winn, Cardinals top prospect, shortstop prospect, absolutely crushing the ball right now down in Memphis. It's good to see him healthy again on the field.
I got goosebumps. I got goosebumps. Man, it doesn't take a lot for me to get excited about something like that, but Masyn Winn just got me a little jacked up waiting for his recall.
So I want to say something on the other side about Masyn Winn because I think he is the exact type of player that this team has been missing. I think he has the personality that this team has been missing, and maybe more importantly, I think he's got the style of game that this team has been missing.
On top of that, I got a comp for it too.
We'll get to all of that coming up next here on 101 ESPN. it's BK. Do you remember that childhood piggy bank that you had? All the satisfaction that you were able to feel as you finally reaped the rewards of your diligent savings? Well, with Truehold, you can access your biggest piggy bank yet, your home's equity. You'll start enjoying the retirement that you planned for right now, and you don't even have to move. Here's how you do it. Truehold will buy your home for its best current value while it remains high, and you get to bank all the cash now while you continue living in your home for as long as you'd like. Plus, Truehold will cover all the property taxes, the insurance, repairs, and maintenance too. And since they pay your home's current value in cash, that money is yours to do whatever you'd like with. So start enjoying your home's equity while it remains high by visiting Truehold.com, and you'll discover how much they'll buy your home for today based on its best current value. Call 1-855-300-9993, or you can visit them at Truehold.com for the smarter and faster way to cash out on your home's full value without having to move. That's 1-855-300-9993, or visit Truehold.com. I'm BK. That was a fun interview with Masyn Winn, Cardinals top prospect. Really enjoyed catching up with him. Alex, one of the things that I have heard, I mentioned this to him in that interview, is that people just love that guy inside of the clubhouse. He's one of Jordan Walker's good friends. Alec Burleson considers him to be a good buddy as well. Like, the guys inside of the Cardinals locker room that are already here that are young really enjoy being around Masyn Winn. That dude has so much confidence and brings so much energy to the field on a day-to-day basis. And Alex, one of the things that I wanted to mention coming out of that interview is I think the Cardinals have been missing that. I think they have been missing a player like Masyn Winn this year. I think this team desperately lacks what Harrison Bader brought to the club. And what I mean by that is just this energy that is out there every single day, the defensive plays that are made. Like, Nolan Arenado makes some great defensive plays. They're wow plays. But Nolan Arenado, you expect that from. He's one of the best players in the world and has been for a decade now, right? When Harrison Bader would make one of those plays in center field and then he would just go nuts out there, there's something to that in the monotony of the day-to-day 162 grind of a baseball season, it gets you going again. I think Masyn Winn has the potential to be that player for the Cardinals.
I didn't get the chance to ask him this because I didn't want to delve too deep and waste time. But when he said, I'm starting to learn more and more that, a pitch is a pitch. It doesn't matter if it's 102 or if it's 82. Do you remember back in 2021 when Jacob deGrom did a rehab stint against Palm Beach? Masyn Winn was one of only 2 hits off of Jacob deGrom. And it's like, okay, so this kid's seen that type of it, and then he's just gotten more and more experience. I told you I had a comp for it. There's 2 different sides of this. No, calm down a minute. Calm down a minute. First of all, talking to him, and I know it's a different sport, but talking to him, I got Jake Neighbours vibes immediately. Like, everybody loves him. He just already seems like he's been at the big leagues for 10 plus years. He says the right things, but then in terms of the swag that goes with it, Javier Baez all day. And now, different projections. I don't expect him to be the Javier Baez. Frankly, I think he's better defensively.
Early career Javi Baez, that'd be great.
But we all remember how much nobody liked Javier Baez in the first couple of years with the Chicago Cubs because he had a little bit of cockiness to him, but he could back up that cockiness. They called him the Magic Man for a reason.
Mago.
That's Masyn Winn. Masyn Winn, everything I just heard from that conversation sounds like a guy that should already be up at the big league level, acts like a pro. He's going to provide, I don't want to say a youth movement in that clubhouse because they already have a lot of it, but it's going to be a different attitude. It's going to be more of a Nolan Arenado attitude and less of like a silent assassin type of attitude.
So Nolan Gorman is a really good baseball player. Nolan Gorman also, like, whether you see the interviews, you see him in the clubhouse, like, he is a quiet, reserved guy who goes about his business. He's very much more in the Paul Goldschmidt vein of a Cardinals player than he is like a Jordan Walker, right? Jordan Walker is not the, he's not the loudest guy in the room by any stretch of the imagination, but Alex, you've had conversations with Walker. You guys talked to him last year whenever I was out, and it was kind of similar to the conversation that we just had with Masyn Winn, where you leave it and you're like, holy hell, that kid is 20 years old. Mm-hmm. He talks like he's 35. He did an interview yesterday with Bally Sports Midwest pregame, and you feel happy by talking to him. And there's something to that. Not everybody in your clubhouse has to have that vibe about them. They don't. You want different personalities so that way they can all mesh to become something that is special, right? You need different ingredients into a friendship. But Masyn Winn is very different than Nolan Gorman. He's very different than Steven Matz. He's very different than a lot of the guys that they have in that clubhouse right now. He's loud, he's fun, he's exciting, he's exuberant, and you need that in this clubhouse right now, dude. They need some of that mixed into what they have currently. I think there were two other things in terms of the on-field product, who Masyn Winn is as a player, that he said in that interview that you could see in the numbers as well, that I think Cardinals fans are really going to enjoy. One is, he said he looks at his strikeout numbers, and he does not want to be a guy that strikes out because, hey, if he puts the ball into play, with his speed, he's got a real chance to be able to beat out the throw to first. Well, this year, he's walked 43 times, which is a solid number. Not great, but solid number. And he's only struck out 81 times on the season.
Yeah.
In more than 480 plate appearances, 80 strikeouts. That's a really nice rate for Masyn Winn down at the AAA level right now. Now, that's not against Major League pitching, but it's a really good rate for him. And it's something that you can see in his minor league history. Something he's been pretty good at is not striking out a ton. The other thing that he mentioned there as a player that I think Cardinals fans are going to enjoy, it's a little bit of cockiness, a little bit of swagger, but it's a lot of confidence. He said, I know if I get to the ball and the guy is still running to first, that guy's out.
Yep.
Because he has so much confidence in his arm, and it's deserved confidence. It's earned arrogance, is what they say about Patrick Mahomes. That's what I would put on him as well. He has an earned confidence about him with his arm, where if that dude is still running and he's got the ball in his hand, he is throwing him out at first base.
When we talk next year and we do our top 20 most important Cardinals for the seasons and we get into our conversations of X factors, Masyn Winn is going to be at the top of that list for me. Not in terms of most important, but he's going to be the X factor for that team. Because I do believe you have to have players that have that attitude on your roster that are young. And not young guys that just come up and act like they're better than everybody and not back it up. A guy that's starting every day at shortstop and actually has that attitude that I'm just as good as everybody at this level. And here's the thing. I asked him that question at the end of, what are you hoping to accomplish by the end of the season? And he said, just so I know what my adjustments need to be and my feet wet.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get to next.
Call him up immediately. As soon as that whatever checkpoint is,
this weekend is when that would take
call
place.
him up immediately because this guy needs to get every start at the end of the season so that he goes into the offseason knowing the adjustments needed for Major League hitting so he hits the ground running next year.
So if you look at the way that he adjusts at each level, you could see it in his numbers. This season in the month of April, Masyn Winn hit 225 with an OPS of 600. Since then, he has an OPS of 900 and he's hitting 300.
Yeah.
It took about a month. We saw this with Nolan Gorman down in the minor leagues as well, where every time that he would go up a level, it would take him about a month before he really got that adjustment to figuring out his way. Last year, when Masyn Winn got the bump up to the AA level, In his first month at that level, he was about a 240 hitter and hit for a little bit of pop, but not a ton. It took him a little bit of time to readjust, and more importantly, he was striking out more than what you would typically expect of him. He had about 15 strikeouts in his first 60 at-bats. Not a huge strikeout rate, but a strikeout rate that is outside of the norm for him. So it's probably going to be an adjustment when he gets up to the big leagues. You're going to see 2, 3, 4, maybe even a month, in weeks or a month into his big league career where it's like, hey, he's batting 200, he's striking out a little more than you'd like to see. That is normal. That is totally within the range of outcomes, and that should help him this offseason go to work on whatever it is that the opposing team is exposing from him. There's going to be something in his swing that he probably doesn't know about right now because AAA pitchers aren't good enough to take advantage of it, that he will learn about himself in that first month of being up in the big leagues, and then this offseason, he can go to work on fixing that adjustment. I think that's something that you get out of something like this.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the Cardinals desperately need is somebody who knows what the major league level talent is so that when you start the season, he's ready for it. Because what you don't need is 3 games at the end of the season for Masyn Winn and not really getting a taste of it, and then coming into next year, maybe getting a little too overzealous through spring training, thinking like I'm ready for this, and then you have that adjustment at the beginning of the season. Because of Masyn Winn's speed and because of Masyn Winn's ability to make contact at the plate, that is a dangerous player to have in the bottom of your order when you're already talking about a lineup that creates a lot of opportunities of runners in scoring position. He said it. I want to give my team the stakes and opportunities when I'm on base. So if he's going from first to third and you're talking about a Brendan Donovan or a Lars Nootbaar behind him, you're talking about taking a lead early in the game.
And I think he's going to be, when he gets up here and starts playing, as a guy that is going to be someone that even if he's slumping, you don't really notice it. And the reason is because he's going to impact the game in all kinds of different aspects. Like, think of Paul Goldschmidt. He hadn't been hitting for a lot of power, but why do you not think about it? Because he's playing great defense. He's getting on base, drawing walks. And I think Masyn Winn could be that same guy in terms of, hey, if he does get on base, he can steal second base. Base hit into left field, he's going to be scoring. Oh, and by the way, he's going to have a cannon of an arm at shortstop and be playing potentially Gold Glove level caliber defense. So even if he struggles, I think it's going to be one of those where it's like you look up and go, oh, man, I didn't realize he's been 1 for his last 30. Why is that? It's because he's been impacting the game in other aspects.
Can I give you the potential lineup for the Cardinals next year?
Don't get me too excited at 1:30, man.
As
Come
a part
on.
of it. Let me start with it this way.
I need a cool down
Jordan
period.
Walker's the 7-hole hitter in this lineup.
What the hell is wrong with you?
And I think it's the right call. Nootbaar leading off in center. Goldie at first, batting second. Gorman playing second base and batting third for you. Arenado batting cleanup, as he typically does, at third base. Contreras fifth, playing catcher. Donovan batting sixth in left field. Walker batting seventh in right. Burleson is your 8-hole hitter as your DH. And Masyn Winn is your 9-hitter, double leadoff type of situation as your everyday shortstop. That is the kind of lineup that this team has not had since 2013.
And
they all got different elements that they bring to the table is what I really like, is they've got that diversity of the lineup. You've got on-base percentage guys with Nootbaar and Donovan. You've got the all-around hitters of Goldie and Arenado and Contreras. You've got the pure power hitter in Nolan Gorman. You've got some young guys at the bottom of that lineup. You've got speed mixed in. You've got Burleson, who's a pure contact hitter. I mean,
there's
he
no
so excited,
gray.
he knocked his mic almost off.
There's no gray area with that lineup. And this season, there was always gray area in terms of, okay, well, how does he fit into your lineup? Or is he going to play everything that you just said? I know exactly where the positions were before you even said it. Doesn't matter how you fluctuated. I know what that roster looks like.
And you know what I like about that lineup? Not a lot of platoons in that lineup.
Yeah.
A lot of everyday players. The only platoon there is maybe Burley, because Gorman has shown he can hit lefties. You've got guys like
Donovan, Nootbaar,
Donovan. Yeah, and even if they struggle in terms of hitting for average, what are they going to do? They're going to get on base. So, like, that's
and
a
against the lefty, you just push him down in the order.
Yeah, and that's kind of a platoonless lineup, which I really like.
Again, you can't get me this excited at 1:30, man.
Somebody on the text line from the 636.
Oh, well, really? You're going to bring us all down like this?
Said, guys, I couldn't help but notice that Carlson and Edman both aren't in that lineup. Nope.
Yeah.
In a best-case scenario for the Cardinals in 2024, neither of those guys is playing every day.
Are they on the bench?
I would have one of them on the bench. I really honestly don't really care who it is. I think you have more value in Edman because as excited as we all are on Masyn Winn, there is the potential that it takes a longer adjustment period than what we're currently making it out to be. And if it does, and he has to go down to the minors for an extended period of time, which is possible next year, you want to have a guy that is around that can capably play shortstop for you. And Tommy Edman's really the only player on this roster currently that can do that. So I would actually keep Tommy Edman, to answer our question from the last segment, on the Cardinals next year. I think his value to this team outweighs the value to another team. So he has the ability to play shortstop. He has the ability to play second base. He has the ability to play center field, all three of which are positions where you're kind of light with depth right now. So I would keep him as the immediate backup to all three of those spots. And then I would trade Carlson this offseason. And this, by the way, is what leads to me saying that, is the lineup that we just talked about. There's not a spot for him on a day-to-day basis. Other guys have simply passed him in the order. And Victor Scott, dude, that guy's going to be at AAA next year, which means he's a phone call away from being up in the big leagues, and that could be another player that ends up taking his spot in the rotation as well. I just don't see a spot for Carlson. So for me, it's not even about if you're high or low on Dylan Carlson. It's about where does he play? What is his value to the Cardinals in 2024? I don't really see it because of the other guys that they have available to them. And I know somebody else said Donovan is not an outfielder. He is for this team. He might be a second baseman elsewhere. On this team, with Nolan Gorman at second, with Nolan Arenado at third, with Paul Goldschmidt at first, Brendan Donovan is a more than capable outfielder, or if you want to put him at DH, you can. That's going to be his role most likely for the Cardinals in 2024.
And let's not act like Brendan Donovan is a liability in the outfield. Like, we got a good chunk of Brendan Donovan in the outfield this season, and although it doesn't look the prettiest every time, he's able to make plays for you. He's not a liability out there. It's just not the outfield you're used to, what was supposed to be Bader, Carlson, and O'Neill, but it still gets the job done.
Yeah, you're probably at best average in left, average in center, and you'd hope Walker would get average in right. And honestly, I think you can improve that. And I know people probably wouldn't want to hear this, but I think Donovan would become the defensive substitution guy that comes out of games late, and where you push Edman into center and put Nootbaar in left, and you become, I would say, probably above average in both those spots then.
And honestly, should matter, because you should be getting swing and miss stuff and via free agency on the pitching side, so you're not reliant so much on your defense.
And that infield defense, by the way, hot
going to be incredible. Masyn Winn's getting to ground balls without the shift.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
going to cut some of Gorman's range down.
Exactly.
Just think of that for a second.
Just stay in this box right here. And I got you covered.
Dude, is there anybody that has a better middle infield with arms than what the Cardinals would have in that scenario? Like, Masyn Winn and Nolan Gorman might be the best double play tandem in the middle infield in all of Major League Baseball. Like, they have that kind of potential defensively.
Just call him the vacuum cleaner, because nothing's getting through that left side of the infield.
Coming up next, Eli Drinkwitz. It seems like he might be figuring out what it takes to be a successful head coach at this level. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Onder Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com. If you're about to trade your car to a dealership or Carvana, stop. It's your car. Why let someone else make thousands off of it? Get full retail value without the retail hassle at sellmycarstl.com. That's sellmycarstl.com.
Suction.
Hey, gang, sorry I'm late. The other surgery went a little longer than anticipated.
Nah, you haven't missed much.
Oh, good. What's this guy getting? A car?
He's selling his kidney to get a new HVAC system installed.
Oh, an overpriced HVAC system. This is like the third person this week.
You don't have to sell your kidney to afford an HVAC system.
Hey, it's BK, and I've got some exciting news for all the men out there. Victory Men's Health has launched a new telehealth site. It's called Victory RX. You can go to see them at victoryrx.com, and that is where you go to get prescribed your ED medication. They've made this process so easy. You go over there, you'll do your entire consult all via text. Victory Men's Health is a well-known brand. They have treated thousands of men in their standalone locations, and now they're giving men from all over, wherever you're listening from right now, you've got easier access to that #1 selling ED medication. Maybe you've tried something before. Maybe it was a pill. You tried it. It was affected by the food or the drink that you consumed earlier in the day. Not with VictoryRx.com. They've got a chewable tablet. It's got active ingredients with both Viagra and Cialis. It's only going to take the one chewable tablet for you because it's not affected by any of the food or the drink that you had earlier in the day, and they're going to make sure that that dosage is correct for you. You can check them out at VictoryRx.com. That's VictoryRx.com. Play hard.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals beat the Oakland A's yesterday 6-2, and they go for a sweep tonight. 5:45 will be first pitch as Matthew Liberatore gets the start for St. Louis, and Paul Blackburn will get the start for the Oakland Athletics. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent Mary Standard heating air conditioning dealer. So Eli Drinkwitz had a big splash on the recruiting trail earlier this week. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. I'm excited to see what Eli Drinkwitz can now do on the field, though. That's the real test for him. He is arguably the best recruiting coach we've ever seen as the head football coach at Mizzou. You can make that argument already before he even takes the field this season. You also have a tough time right now making the argument that he's even in the top 5 in terms of the actual best head coaches that Mizzou has had so far on the football side of things. I think part of that is because the job was really big early on. And this is not a shot at Eli Drinkwitz. Being a head football coach in the SEC is freaking hard. I remember when, I think it was Kim Anderson took over and we were talking with him. He said the biggest adjustment to being a head coach in the SEC for him, now there were a lot of things, but it was having to say no. It was having so many different people that were pulling you in all different directions, right? You've got a meeting over here. You've got boosters that want to talk to you over here. You've got this appearance that has to happen over there. And eventually the actual coaching kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Or for Eli Drinkwitz, I think early on, he came in with a little bit of overconfidence. He was like, oh, I'm this hotshot coordinator that had all this success at Appalachian State. My offense is going to come in and fix everything that went wrong with Mizzou football. We're going to start putting up a ton of points and just wait until I get a hold of this program. And then it took a while. And then he saw, hey, you know, like my offense might not be the thing that ends up getting this thing off the ground. Maybe me as a CEO type of coach has to be the way that I go about this. So yesterday, Alex, he was on SEC Network. And he was asked about his coaching philosophy and how it's changed over the last few seasons. And I thought he said something that indicated he has grown in a way that may allow Mizzou to have a legitimate breakthrough type of a season this year. Take a listen to Eli Drinkwitz.
Man, if you're going to keep perspective in this business, you better love your players and the people you coach with every single day. And you better not lose focus on that. because if you do, you're going to get cynical. And I was getting cynical. Instead, I figured out, man, I got to love my players. I got to love what I do on a day-to-day basis. I got to love the people I work with. All this other stuff, it's hard part of your job. But, man, if you don't love your players and love the people you work with, you'll get cynical, and I wasn't going to do that. So that's how I try to keep perspective. I mean, you got good days, bad days. There's bad days out there, but when I have those bad days, I try to remember what they told Jimmy, you better love your horse, because at the end of the day, that's all you got.
Alex, I think there were times early in Eli Drinkwitz's tenure at Mizzou where he wasn't the easiest person to work with. I am sometimes not the easiest person to work with, so certainly I can understand where he's coming from in that perspective. But I love what I do, man. That's part of what makes this job fun, hopefully, for all of us on a day-to-day basis, is that we really enjoy it. It's not the hardest job in the world. We're compensated to talk about sports on a day-to-day basis. That's pretty great. Eli Drinkwitz is compensated exceptionally well to coach a football team every single day. It's a really great job to have. It also comes with immense pressure and a lot of things off of the field that are difficult. And so I think Drinkwitz has kind of found this middle ground of, okay, here's what I need to do. Here's how I need to present our program publicly. I can still do some of the showmanship stuff. That's still out there. He still wears the shoes. He's still got the stuff where he's going to recruiting visits in a helicopter or in a dump truck or whatever. Like, make those headlines. That's important at a program like Mizzou. But also, let's kind of get down to the nitty-gritty as well. Let's get the right coaches in here. Let's make sure that we have the right players here. Let's make sure that we're loving up on people on a day-to-day basis. I like what we're hearing from Eli Drinkwitz right now.
I love what I'm hearing, and frankly, I hope he backs it up, because he's got everything else that you want in a coach except the results right now, and maybe we're starting to get to the results. I thought the best thing that Drink has done was negate his ability to be the offensive coach on top of the head coach, because that frankly has plagued him. Now, like you just mentioned, he brought somebody in and basically said, you're doing this. I'm just going to be the head coach. The hard part, and the part where he's under so much pressure, is because the perception doesn't back up the results. And you've got the perception of a guy that recruits love and that you sell the program correctly, specifically the NIL side of things now. Like, you've got that perception. But the hard part is, well, we need to start seeing more than a 6-6 record, or at best 7 wins. Where's that next step? And now it sure sounds like somebody who loves his job so much is, because let's be honest, in this business, everybody's got ego. You're going to have ego. You expect to be the best, and you don't want somebody to take your spot. He basically said, I'm not going to keep this spot unless I showcase my ability to use others to get us to the next level. And that's what he did. And I think Drink's in the right position now to succeed this upcoming year.
I think they've got a chance to go like 8-4 this year, and that would certainly be a step forward. Another program, though, that has that opportunity is Illinois. Alex, the other day, The Athletic put together their programs in terms of the tiers within each respective conference. And when they got to the Big Ten, I was a little surprised. I'm going to be honest with you, Alex, because I've been sleeping on Illini. They had them as a Tier 2 program going into this season. So you've got your typical, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. Everybody's excited about them. They're all Tier 1 programs this year in the Big Ten. In Tier 2, The Athletic had Iowa, Maryland, and Illinois as the 4th, 5th, and 6th best programs in the Big Ten this year. T-Bone, are we sleeping on the Illini? Should we be a little higher on them, where we're talking about them the same way that we are Mizzou, of the potential to go like 8-4 this year?
I think so, because I think, like, the way I look at their schedule, I think they're probably 7-5, but you turn one game in that schedule there, and I think they're an 8-4 team. I think that's probably their ceiling, though. Like, I can't imagine them going 9-3. But let's be honest, 8-4, and you can probably contend in the Big Ten West. I mean, they almost won the Big Ten West last year if it wasn't for a slide in about a 3-game span there where they lost to Michigan, Michigan State, and then I can't remember who the other one was. But I think we are kind of sleeping on them. Now, I can see why that is, because you lose Chase Brown, you lose a Witherspoon, Chase Brown's brother, who was at linebacker for them last year. Like, they've got to replace a lot of key pieces. But I think they're going to be good on the defensive line. I think that's going to be their strength on defense. And I think they've got the pieces to somewhat replace Chase Brown, but I think what they're going to do is they're going to look to try and get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quicker this year and just let their guys run in space at the wide receiver position. That's what it sounds like the plan is for them. So I could see them being a team that 7-5, 8-4, and then you look at them at the end of the year and go, wow, I actually didn't see this coming. I thought they'd really regress under Brett Bielema.
I think that the games that you can go ahead and write off for Illinois, like Mizzou this year going into the season, guys, I don't think they're going to beat Tennessee or Georgia. I think it's pretty unlikely that either of those games goes Missouri's way.
That kind of thinking.
I don't think Illinois, now, they have a little bit of history with this team where it goes in a way that you don't expect it to, but I don't think Illinois is going to beat Penn State this year. I think that's it, though. When you look at the rest of their schedule, I don't know that there's a whole lot of games where you look at it and say there's zero chance that they win that one. KU's not with. I think that that's going to be a tougher game than what some are leading on. KU's a pretty solid team right now, and they've got a very good quarterback. But that's a flip game. You could easily win that one. They might even be favored going into it. Wisconsin's not a world beater at this point in their program. Iowa, I think, is probably the best comparison currently for what Illinois is as a football team. Good run game. We'll see what they get offensively, but you know the defense is going to be really good. Hopefully you get some good special teams play. Boom, you got a chance to be able to win that game. The rest of the schedule is very beatable. So 8-4, yeah, it's very much in play for the Illini. I think you could even dream a little bit more than that.
Whoa.
Because the Big Ten and what your conference slate is this year is not all that unbelievably tough. You don't play Ohio State. You don't play Michigan. You got one of the big boys on your schedule this year, and the rest of it, it's doable.
All right, Tanner, 12-0. Thoughts?
Start dreaming a little bit.
Dream a little bigger, man.
You should be dreaming of 11-1 this year as an Illini fan.
Yeah, man.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Don't sleep on them.
This is the same team that lost to Connor Bazelak in Indiana last year.
Yeah, this year's going to be different. Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. We're here to tell you about our friends over at Apache Village RV Center. Alex, I never thought in my younger years that I was going to be somebody that was interested in the RV lifestyle. But then my dad got into it. We took it out to Colorado. We visited some family out there. We went to a ski resort, and that was the way that we went about it. It was easier. We didn't have to rely on those expensive resort fees around the Christmas time. No, instead, we could take our RV out there and live our way that we wanted to while we were out there. It's the best way to do it, and at Apache RV, they will get you taken care of.
Yeah, look, when you come to buy something so big like an RV, you want to go somewhere where they're not pushy and they're not forcing you into anything, and that's what you get with Apache Village. This is a family business. 3 generations, over 40 years have been in this RV business, and the Meyer family takes care of you. You walk in, you walk through their big station out in Hazelwood, and you could check out everything from a small RV to a big RV, whatever your preference is. They've got financing options, but this is the coolest part, in my opinion. When you become a part of that Apache Village RV family, you are the priority to them. They prioritize their customers above just the general public. So go check them out. Fall in love with them like BK and I did. Tell them we sent you. Go one better. Go one Apache Village RV Center.
Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
If you go over there, you'll hear our interview. I thought it was a really good one, not because of our skills, but because Masyn Winn was excellent with us earlier today, talking about what he has learned about himself as a player, what he brings, hopefully, to the Cardinals in the future. Really good conversation with the Cardinals' top prospect, Masyn Winn. Alex, before we get out of here today, the Cardinals are back in action tonight. Matthew Liberatore makes his first start since we saw him with the best start in a Cardinals uniform. What are you anticipating from him this evening?
Kind of the same. Now, I don't think he's going to give you the brilliance that he did that last start, but I'm expecting a Matthew Liberatore to build off of what he has done in terms of, just like Dakota Hudson, pounding the strike zone, being aggressive with that, utilizing the new pitch that he has figured out right now, and keeping that swing and miss stuff. The part that I'm going to be very intrigued by, and I wanted to look this up, this is his... No, so he did pitch at home versus the Twins, correct? So he has had one good start. The one that he had was in Tampa. Now you're back home. How do you do that in terms of that type of pressure compared to what you just did in Tampa?
You see, for me, the only thing that can happen today for Liberatore that I'm not like, yes, I want to see a good start from him. Same thing I said about Dakota Hudson yesterday. The only thing I can read into this start is if it goes poorly, because it's the Oakland Athletics. And like, I don't want to sound like I'm not going to be impressed if he goes out and shoves 8 innings again against the Oakland Athletics. Like, look, that's a good step for him. That's something that I'm not sure he would have done earlier in the year, even if he played Oakland. But I think it's more, you can read more into something if it goes wrong today because it is the Oakland Athletics. He should be able to give you a quality start tonight. He's going up against the same kind of lineup he used to play in AAA when he was with the Memphis Redbirds. So I expect to see a good start from Liberatore tonight. I'll be disappointed if it's not.
It's not going to bode well for him if he's going up like the same lineups against AAA.
This is the worst lineup that he has faced this year. He's actually done pretty well this year in AAA. I think there's better lineups that he has faced in AAA than what he's going to face tonight against the Oakland Athletics.
Oakland, it has got to be
Give us a quality start. We'll feel good about it and see what it looks like the next time out. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. T-Bone sticking around for the Fast Lane. I'll be on for the first segment of the Fast Lane here on 101 ESPN.